Hey guys. The microphone works with me. I haven't had the headphones on. Stony Progressive, daytime show, weekend show, day off show, all the things show. Um, Internet didn't work very well last night. Couldn't even set up the stream, let alone go streaming. So yeah, I it went down a week ago, and we were trying to up our internet, but first we want to make sure the company's even doing the proper internet. And as you know, there's only like three people that own internet, so we're battling with one of the three, right? Um, so yeah, Stony Progressive daytime show. I am going to be doing news and maybe doing a little something different. This is supposed to be my Friday night, Saturday night idea, but I'm gonna be doing a little stretching, a little yoga in the back while I listen to this and react, and not just being completely idle. Drinking some yerba mate, so I'll be getting that energy in a little bit. But I did have a long day yesterday, so I am just getting it going. Dog woke me up. I got some cleaning done, and now let's do this. Yeah. All right, I'm stoked for a Saturday afternoon show. Let's share this stream out, guys. Throw it out, text it out, tweet it out, put it on Facebook, whatever. Let's bring some people in and talk about some news. Let's get baked. Only baker friendlies though. Drinker baker friendlies. No stiffs. I the first couple months I did this, I was getting attacked by people saying, "Oh, Stony, blah blah blah." Like that's what I'm doing. Deal with it. All right. On to the first. While we get set in and settled, let's do the headlines from Amy Goodman, the only source that I check regularly for Main Street Media News, the only Main Street Media News that's worth checking in on. She's not great, but no Main Street Media is, right? So Amy Goodman, I do have some NPR later today too while I get going. They had some health segments and some Russia segments that were pretty funny, but of course there's plenty of Russia on the docket today. I got Jon Stewart, I got government secrets, Russell Brand, I got all the people. We're gonna take a while. We're gonna have a long show. Let's settle in and get stoned and just check out the highlights from last night, right? Let's just see what Amy Goodman had to say.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Columns of Russian tanks and armored vehicles are advancing on Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, and have reached the outskirts of the city after a second night of heavy Russian shelling and airstrikes. U.S. intelligence officials view the military offensive as a move to encircle Kyiv and topple the Ukrainian government, something they warned could happen within days. On Thursday, Russian President Vladimir Putin gathered Russia's wealthiest men for a meeting just hours after Russian forces began a sweeping attack on Ukraine by land, by air, and by sea. Putin said he had no choice but to attack in order to ensure Russia's security.
Everything that is happening is a desperate measure. They left us no other option. They've created such security risks that we couldn't react differently.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he's remaining in the capital.
I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but I keep hearing Russia just wants to impose a puppet, and that's what this guy is, an American puppet.
Despite threats to his life, on Thursday he vowed to defend Ukraine while saying he's open to talks with Russia and discussing the issue of neutrality. Zelensky has ordered a full military mobilization, with all men aged 18 to 60 ordered to remain in Ukraine to face possible conscription into military service. Elsewhere Thursday, Russian forces captured the Chernobyl nuclear power plant after a fierce battle, raising fears of a new nuclear disaster. The White House expressed alarm over what it called credible reports that staff at the Chernobyl plant are being held hostage.
Ugh. Like I said, I had a sleepy day yesterday, so I'm finishing 2 of last night's packed bowls, and they're not tasty. I'm going to be coughing a lot. I'm going to put myself on mute and just watch this for a little while. Because, yeah, I'm going to be coughing a bit. This is untasty smoke right now. Let's get through these untasty headlines with some untasty smoke.
The United Nations warns over 100,000 Ukrainians have been displaced by Russia's assault, with thousands fleeing to other European countries. This is UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi.
The humanitarian consequences on civilian populations will be devastating. There are no winners in war, but countless lives will be torn apart. We have already seen reports of casualties and people starting to flee their homes to seek safety.
Across Russia, thousands of people risk police violence to protest Vladimir Putin's decision to invade Ukraine, despite government warnings that dissent would be met with severe punishment. Human rights groups say at least 1,800 people have been arrested at demonstrations in Moscow, St. Petersburg, and other cities across Russia. Meanwhile, anti-war protests were held across the United States and in cities around the world, including New York, Tokyo, Taipei, London, Paris, and Berlin. The Pentagon's ordered 7,000 additional U.S. troops to deploy to Germany. President Biden's also directed Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin to move U.S. forces in Europe to Poland and the Baltic republics bordering Russia. On Thursday, Biden announced the U.S. would tighten its sanctions against Russia with new measures targeting Russian banks, energy producers, weapons makers, and wealthy families close to President Putin. But Biden stopped short of directly sanctioning Putin or kicking Russia out of the global SWIFT banking system.
This aggression cannot go unanswered. If it did, the consequences for America would be much worse. America stands up to bullies. We stand up for freedom.
Seven-nation European Union also announced new sanctions on Russia, as did Japan, South Korea, Australia, and other U.S. allies, after headlines will spend the rest of the hour on Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The U.S. launched an airstrike in Somalia Tuesday, its first in the country since August last year. U.S. Africa Command said the strike was carried out under the authorization of use for military force in response to an al-Shabaab attack on partner forces. This comes amidst a spate of deadly suicide attacks and as Somalia remains in political turmoil, once again extending parliamentary elections that were supposed to be completed by today to next month. Meanwhile, Save the Children has warned millions are going hungry and hundreds of thousands are being displaced as Somalia faces its worst drought in a decade. Syrian state television reported Israeli missiles hit near the capital Damascus Thursday, killing 3 soldiers. It's the 4th Israeli airstrike on Syria this month and comes a day after missiles that were launched from the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights struck the Syrian border province of Quntir. Israel says its attacks target Syrian government positions, Iran-backed militias, and Hezbollah fighters. President Biden's expected to announce his pick for the next U.S. Supreme Court justice today. This comes exactly 2 years after Biden vowed on the campaign trail to nominate the first black woman Supreme Court justice. The top contenders believed to be federal judge and former public defender Ketanji Brown Jackson. Other contenders include South Carolina federal judge J. Michelle Childs and Leandra Kruger, a justice on the California Supreme Court. In coronavirus news, the Centers for Disease Control is expected to announce a relaxation of its mask guidance today, allowing most people to forgo them in public indoor spaces. The new guidance will rely more heavily on the rate of hospitalizations rather than just caseloads to determine if masks are recommended. Most states have already lifted or significantly eased their mask mandates. Recorded cases have dropped by around 2/3 from 2 weeks ago, though daily deaths are still averaging close to 2,000. In Minnesota, 3 former Minneapolis police officers have been found guilty of violating George Floyd's civil rights. On Thursday, a federal judge found J. Alexander King, Thomas Lane, and Tu Tao each failed in their duties on May 25, 2020, as they ignored Floyd's repeated pleas of "I can't breathe," while Officer Derek Chauvin pressed his knee into Floyd's neck for over 9 minutes, murdering him. 2 of the officers also helped Chauvin physically restrain Floyd, while one officer prevented passers-by from helping. Federal prosecutor Charles Kovatz spoke after the verdict.
These officers had a moral responsibility, a legal obligation, and a duty to intervene. And by failing to do so, they committed a crime. This is a reminder that all sworn law enforcement officers, regardless of rank or seniority, individually and independently, have a duty to intervene and provide medical aid to those in their custody.
The three officers remain free on bond until their sentencing hearing. They still face a state trial in June on charges of aiding and abetting George Floyd's murder. Floyd's family welcomed Thursday's verdict, which they said should serve as an example for police departments around the country. This is George Floyd's nephew, Brandon Williams.
Oftentimes, officers kill black and brown men and women, and we get little to no consequences. A lot of times we don't even get charges, let alone a conviction. So we'll take this small victory, and smile about it and be happy, but deep down we're still hurting. We want this to stop.
A judge in Michigan has ordered the parents of an alleged teenage gunman to stand trial for involuntary manslaughter. 15-year-old Ethan Crumbley is being charged as an adult with first-degree murder, terrorism, and gun charges over last November's shooting at Oxford High School, which killed students Hannah St. Juliana, Tate Meir, Justin Schilling, and Madison Baldwin. 7 others were injured in the assault. On Thursday, a judge said there was enough evidence to merit a trial for Crumbley's parents, Jennifer and James Crumbley, who allegedly gave the gun used in the shooting to their son as an early Christmas present. Prosecutors say the pair failed to intervene when their son showed clear signs of mental distress in the weeks leading up to the massacre. An Oakland County Sheriff's detective testified the teen's journal contained disturbing images and repeated graphic entries about his plans.
Toward the bottom half of the page, it says, "First off, I got my gun. It's a SP 2022 6-hour 9mm. Second, the shooting is tomorrow, I have access to the gun and ammo."
Jennifer and James Crumbley remain jailed on $500,000 bond. If convicted of involuntary manslaughter, they each face up to 60 years in prison. Immigrant justice advocates are demanding Amazon divest from an air cargo holding company whose subsidiaries include Omni Air International, which carries out deportation flights for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, known as the ICE Air program. The Intercept reports Amazon purchased a percentage of Air Transport Services Group, the company that owns Omni Air, for some $131 million last year. Activists have long exposed abuse faced by asylum seekers on Omni Air deportation flights. In 2017, deported asylum seekers returned to Somalia in an Omni Air flight were reportedly beaten and restrained with straitjackets. In another incident in 2012, a Salvadoran asylum seeker miscarried her triplets aboard a removal flight to El Salvador. And in New York, immigrant rights leader Ravi Ragbir has been granted 3 years of deferred action, allowing him to stay in the United States to fight for permanent immigration relief. The settlement is part of a First Amendment lawsuit filed by Ragbir and several immigrant justice groups accusing Immigration and Customs Enforcement of targeting and retaliating against activists. In January 2018, Ravi Ragbir was detained during a check-in with ICE and was ordered deported. He recorded this message before his apprehension.
I hope and I pray that you will step out of your comfort zone to create a network of safety, not just in the houses of worship, not just in the space where we call sensitive zone, but create a network of safety around you and around the community, because you refuse to let this agency act. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, you are refusing to let them come in to your community and destroy it and take away those families only because they don't have one piece of paper. Our humanity is not dependent on a piece of paper.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
Do you struggle with occasional nerve aches in your hands or feet? Try Nervive Nerve Relief from the world's #1 selling nerve care company. Nervive contains alpha-lipoic acid to relieve occasional nerve aches, weakness, and discomfort. Try Nervive Nerve Relief.
Bill, how confident are you that we as a global community will deal with the next pandemic better?
Well, you know, there were a lot of people in 2015 after the Ebola epidemic who were talking about what needed to be done. And in this pandemic, the countries that had some exposure to SARS-CoV-1 were amongst the outliers. You know, so Australia is a true outlier. They orchestrated diagnostics, they executed quarantine policies, and they have a death rate in a different league than the other rich countries. I mean, just utterly different. And everybody had the capability to do that. They, you know, have less PCR machines than other rich countries. It wasn't some thing. They had more travelers coming in from China than other countries. So hopefully, you know, given the so many negative things, not just the millions of deaths and the economic toll, but the lack of schooling, depression, overdose deaths. I mean, it's you know, hard to make the entire list. As you say, you know, for men, more men died. For women, more women had, you know, unacceptable burdens thrust onto them. So the cost of being ready for the next pandemic is not super large. It's not like climate change where, you know, 10 trillion, 20 trillion, these are big numbers. You know, a global surveillance capability would cost like $1 billion a year. The R&D that we need to do to you know, a global surveillance capability would cost like $1 billion a year. The R&D that we need to do
Sorry, guys. Yep, I was muted because I was smoking. Oh my god. I can't believe that he just said what he said. That's the most intense thing I've heard ever. That was. Yep, I gotta do it again because that. It's just. It's not a real thing, is it? Like he just said that. He just said that.
20 trillion, these are big numbers. You know, a global surveillance capability would cost like $1 billion a year. The R&D that we need to do to get magic vaccines and diagnostics and therapeutics, you know, that's less than $100 billion over the next decade. So, you know, if we're rational, yes.
So he's saying that he could do both of those things himself if he wanted to, but he's not gonna. Is that what he's saying? Because that's what I'm hearing. He could do both of those things himself. He could take care of both of those problems personally. Just Microsoft could just do it for them, you know, for the sheer power of it, and not charge the government anything, right? Is that what he's saying? God, I hate that guy. Don't hate billionaires. They did such good for the world. He created computers. No, he was the rich kid in a room full of people that created Microsoft. He was the rich kid. They pushed people out. He bought people off, and he took it over. Just like Elon Musk had nothing to do with the creation of Tesla, he bought it out, and part of him buying it out told the creators not to, you know, advertise that he was not originally involved. So these people are rich. They're not actually innovators. Just because Elon Musk was willing to lose tons of money, he was willing to lose tons of money on electric cars because he knew eventually he would make money on it. Just like Amazon was willing to lose money on books and diapers and all sorts of random shit because eventually they would push people out and make money on it. They were willing to lose money because they had the money to invest. Yeah. Okay. So fuck Bill Gates. Fuck Bill Gates. All right. So he's just a rich kid and he's trying to abstract money. The best way to abstract money is to take it from the government. And he's invested in vaccines. He's taken over our food supply, and he's trying to take over surveillance of the world. And he's just, it'd only be $1 billion, guys. Just give me $1 billion, and I'll take over surveillance of the world, and I'll survey all of you. To help stop a pandemic, he'll surveil us. Okay, just slow down. Taking over the world on us, you dick. Alright, let me push through all these. Alright, let's move on. Nope, not that yet. Nope. Let's get one more story before we get into anything for Ukraine. Whew, okay. We're just all over the board here. So, this is premiered 16 hours ago. I've been waiting to watch it with you guys. I'm obviously getting caffeinated here. I'm not nearly stoned enough to wrap my head around a day off on a Saturday. I'm losing money, so I'm getting ranty up on here. After I think we get through this first half segment, I am going to do my workers rant of the week after we get through these next two segments here, guys. Let me pack another bowl.
Redacted Tonight, the only comedy show hosted by a cyborg pumped full of a state-of-the-art joke algorithm. What? Who wrote that completely untrue thing in the teleprompter? Not. Anyway, America finally has a solution to our labor crisis. You know, the one that's been causing restaurants to close due to a lack of employees, causing retail outlets to cut their hours, and causing Sesame Street to have to fill employment gaps with undocumented puppets. I love you, Carlos, but it's just not the same. The immigrants come here and they steal our jobs. That should be my ass with an art student's hand up it. Anyway, with the labor crisis getting bad, perhaps the answer is to pay workers more. Here's a rather complicated chart of the minimum wage since 2009. As you can see, back in 2009, it was $7.25, okay? And now, a whole 13 years later, it's a whopping $7.25. So that's almost enough.
Oh, you should show the 20 years before that where it was like $3.50 to $5.50 to $7.50. It's like in 30 years we've done nothing. Oh.
By the lunch, you'll need to secretly eat out of a New Balance running shoe so it doesn't look like you're eating on the job at the shoe store where you work. But even though the minimum wage has not changed in all those years, it's not as bad as it looks because you have to take into account inflation. $7.25 today was worth $9.50 in 2009. So it's kind of like the minimum wage used to be $9.50 and has actually gone down to $7.25. Right. Oh, so it's it's worse. It's worse now. It's not better. I got it backwards, like that time in my high school talent show. I did the moonwalk forwards and ended up in the orchestra pit. Okay. So the wages suck in this country. The benefits suck for most employees. The benefits consist of a coupon for 15% off of sexual harassment. But you only get one coupon, so use it sparingly. And a lot of workers just aren't willing to subject themselves anymore to the garbage life we all call being an American. Well, there's an easy answer, and you might be thinking that answer is to, I don't know, raise the wages or give workers a 4-day work week or to give them awesome health care or to allow the playing of video games on employees' phones while they're performing surgical procedures. I mean, isn't finding out your doctor accidentally sewed an extra nipple onto you a small price to pay to see him get to the underground sewage system level of a Street Fighter, which is a really modern video game reference I just came up with? But rather than do any of those things, increase wages, increase time off, etc., states and corporations have decided the answer is, of course, to hire children. How exciting! Now our kids can pull themselves up by their footy pajamas. Just recently, Wisconsin's Senate approved a bill allowing 14-year-olds to work as late as 11 p.m. And supporters say it could help plug the labor shortage. And CNBC says one solution to the labor shortage, teenagers. They continue, teenagers are suddenly in high demand, much like at Dennis Quaid's wedding ceremony. And teenagers are apparently not just the answer to who's going to blend your green juice smoothie and glare at you for not exhibiting the proper blue jean tightness. Are they supposed to be tight now or loose? Are we back to them falling off our ass, or is it back to skin tight? I can't keep up and my balls can't breathe. Make up your minds, tweenagers. We're all relying on you. But children are apparently also the answer for who is going to drive Mack trucks across the country. The U.S. is allowing teens to drive big rigs in a new pilot program.
What?
A program coming straight from Congress eases supply chain backlogs by putting teens behind the wheels of big rigs. You know, the same group of Americans who we don't trust with a rental car or a beer or with any kind of musical taste. They are now encouraged to drive massive bombs down our highways. But safety advocates say the program runs counter to data showing that younger drivers get in more crashes than older ones. They say it's unwise to let teenagers be responsible for rigs that can weigh 80,000 pounds and cause catastrophic damage when they hit lighter vehicles.
Unwise.
Boy, that was really the nicest way I've ever heard of saying, holy God, this is fucked up. The program runs counter to the data on the rest of us being able to remain alive. Yes, the other day someone was carjacking me and I said, I'd like to give you my keys and wallet and get into the trunk, but that program runs counter to the data concerning the level at which I would like to keep my car and continue breathing oxygen. But there is a bit of a silver lining to all of this. Maybe we shouldn't feel bad for these children we're forcing to labor, because the U.S. Never really cared much about children. Journalist Alan McLeod pointed out, the U.S. is the only country in the world that is not party to the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. This is because it wants to reserve the right to execute minors, which the convention explicitly prohibits. There you go, silver lining. The U.S. hasn't signed on to giving children any rights because we want to reserve the ability to murder them. Point being, obviously, if we weren't lunatics, we would not think that forcing kids to work is the answer. But beyond that, why is no one talking about how people should be working a lot less? Yes, less. Most people work at jobs they don't love, but they do it to pay the bills. This is called wage slavery. And if you support workers, you should want them to have at least a wee bit less slavery, right? Well, one company's actually doing it. An American tech company has decided to give employees a 4-day work week permanently because multiple studies have shown that workers with a 4-day week are happier, healthier, and less likely to accidentally get their arm caught in the industrial meat pulverizer, at which point it's no longer their arm, but instead.
You want to know what day to give them off? Give them the choice. Give them the choice of having Monday off, Friday off, or Wednesday off. Have your crews only be on Tuesday, Thursday, where it's a full crew. It can work. It can work. Productivity is better with a 4-day work week than a 5-day. It's been proven.
The chicken pot pie's arm. The San Francisco-based e-commerce developer Bolt piloted the program last fall, and the results were overwhelmingly positive. Workers don't actually get less work done in a 4-day work week. Instead, they're more focused and productivity remains the same as a 5-day week. For example, if you have a regular job, let's say fixing broken escalators, you know, pulling the doll heads and Comic-Con nightcrawler tails out of the escalator gears. Suppose you fix about 20 escalators in a 5-day week. But when the week gets cut to 4 days, studies have shown you'll increase your efficiency and remove those 20 mangled doll heads in only 4 days, and you'll get paid the same as 5 days. So the amount of work done is the same, but the worker has an extra weekend day, an extra day to live his or her life the way they want, to appreciate the miracle of existence, the beauty of every breath, the magnificence of every sunbeam that warms their face, the sublimity of every smile their young child makes. Or, if that's not their thing, they can eat chili off their stomach and fill their couch with Dorito farts. But either way, at least they will be wage slaves one fewer day a week.
Fuck yeah.
The CEO of that 4-day-a-week tech company said, a lot of companies operate with a lot of work theater, which is people caring more about the appearance of working than the actual work. Work theater, meaningless meetings, useless presentations, superfluous trust fall exercise. Going clickety, clickety, clackety, clickety, clack on a keyboard that's not even connected to a computer. I got caught doing that once. My boss asked me why my keyboard was plugged into a pastrami sandwich, and I had to tell her it was Apple's new iSandwich, which tastes better if you email a Shakespearean sonnet to the sandwich before biting into it. She believed me, but she was never really the same. She left her 6-figure job in marketing and ran away with a tuna melt. Point is, we waste a shit ton of time at our jobs, but we do waste that time for good reason. Most of us fucking hate being there. A lot of jobs are meaningless in the grand scope of things, so most employees try to do as little as possible while getting enough done that nobody goes, hey, that guy's doing as little as possible. What's up with that? For example, this entire segment is actually just a reprint of a segment I did 8 years ago because I didn't feel like writing a new one. But that doesn't mean this segment isn't really good. Like that movie that just came out, Interstellar. McConaughey does it again, am I right? Long story, slightly longer so that I can fill my required work hours. The 5-day work week should be a fucking 4-day work week. We would have more time for love and family and art and existence rather than the bullshit everyone does at work. Wait, where are you going? Where are you I meant except for the people that work on this show. You should totally, fuck, who's gonna film the part about coming here from Washington, D.C., the belly of the beast, redacted height? Someone, come on.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely, yeah. People would prefer a 4-day work week. 2 days, like, you need a day of rest. You also need to get shit done. And, you know, it'd also be nice to have a day during the week where you could get your doctors, your dentists, your blah, blah, blahs done for everybody in the family and get those kind of things done that you can only do during the 5-day week. We can absolutely pull this off. We are not beyond just figuring out how to properly run our lives, right? Like, this is our lives. Working is most of your life. Like, we should be able to pull off work and enjoyment of life, not have to wait till retirement when you can barely move to be able to retire, you know, actually enjoy things. And yeah, there's nations with higher happiness levels that are doing these things. I guess I'm just gonna work a rant now, guys, right? So yeah, I'm working my 40, which is fine. We're getting up in that high 40 now. In the summer, I'm working mid 50s to mid 60s, so I'm definitely feeling it. And I'm not saying that I don't choose to do this, but I have to do it to pull off any sort of income that would allow me to actually take a vacation. All right, I lived 5 years, 6 years, 7 years without a vacation straight. Vacationing makes you you just get so bitter without taking that break. And yeah, other countries get to take these massive breaks. They're expected to take month-long breaks. I don't get vacation pay, so I have to save massive amounts of money for missed income and for bills while I'm gone and for all those things. I don't get any vacation pay. That's not something service industry gets, okay? So not only do we not get health benefits, we don't get time off, we don't get sick pay, we don't get, you know, I don't have any benefits. I don't get vacation pay. Even if I were to stick at a place, we get very minimal vacation pay. And it's usually based on minimum wage, not on the amount of money we would make in a week, which we don't make minimum wage. we depend on tips. And yes, if you're going to ask your bartender, should I pay you or should I pay the server? Well, who do you want to tip for the drinks that you just made? I made your drinks. I took care of you for 6-7 minutes. I want you to pay me. Oh my God. Yeah, that's the. Hey. Come here. Come here. Jeez, Pete. All right, I have the window open so he can see people walking by, and he is bored, so he's gonna bark. Oh, shut up. All right. You distracted me. I'm ADD. I can't remember what I was gonna make. Anyway. No, I don't want to. Yeah. As a bartender, I have people that come in and just complain politics to me, and I'm not allowed to say anything back. So this is me. This is me saying something, right? My only way to say something. Okay. So let's move on. Russia, Ukraine. Hey. I don't know what that means. When a customer says you received your money you received your money, I don't know what you're saying. I don't know what you mean. Hey, you're fine. I don't even know what that means. You received your money? Yeah, I mean, COVID has changed the game. It's a harder experience. And if people want restaurants to keep existing, man, you know how many questions I get a day? You want to know if when people say the alcohol is too expensive? I really don't care. I really don't care if you think the alcohol is too expensive. I really don't. Go fucking home and drink. What does that even mean? When people don't call you out for tipping cheap. They call you out for like, you were really busy today. My food took forever. And if they complain about the expensiveness of something, whatever. That's not. No one's ever said that to me. No one's ever thought that the $80 for the food and drink goes to me. I've never heard anybody ever say that. Yeah, I mean, you have some people go, does that include gratuity or something like that? And the answer is almost always no. It's really hard you have to like have big signs posted to include gratuity nowadays. So if you don't see a giant sign posted, includes gratuity, then it doesn't include gratuity. And yeah, you got to move on. I don't want to get into nitpicking I just want to talk about the industry. I want to nitpick customer service for hours on end. That doesn't help me out. But the point is, we are the biggest industry of the world, or of America right now, guys. And, what the fuck? Am I visible? Hello? Am I good? I don't love this thing. It's an old gamer headphones, obviously. And, yeah. It doesn't work the best, so. Looks like I'm still streaming. Good. All right, let's move on to Ukraine. Let's stop ranting. We'll talk about food and health in a little bit. That's just food and drinks. Let's talk about food and drinks in a little bit. Let's move on to Ukraine. Oh, I should probably say, this is what you cook for Ukraine. State Department Pelosi grilled over leaked tape. Now, this is not. I don't know. Maybe we should just play it. Let's see what happens.
Russia was behind this bugging and release, and if you are not willing to go that far, are you concerned at all that officials in the Russian government seem to be wanting to point to draw attention to this?
Well, certainly we think this is a new low in Russian tradecraft in terms of publicizing, posting. I don't have any other independent details about the origin of the YouTube video. You're right. This is clearly happened overnight and is relatively new. But this is something they've been actively promoting, posting on, tweeting about. and certainly that we feel that represents a new low.
But do you think what do you mean? Can I follow up, please?
Sure.
What do you mean by this is a new low in Russian tradecraft? Tradecraft is a word typically that refers almost exclusively to espionage activities. Are you saying that you regard this as an act of Russian espionage, that this conversation was recorded and broadcast?
Well, certainly if it was recorded and broadcast, that would be that it would be, violating a private conversation.
But you said this is a new low in Russian tradecraft. That means you think that the Russians, in fact, recorded and made available this
Well,
broadcast.
as I just stated, I don't have any independent or new information on that, but obviously they promoted this and were the first to tweet about it. So that's what I was noting.
That's your suspicion. That you didn't, you said this is a new low in Russian tradecraft. That implies that you believe it is their responsibility.
Well, I think I was pretty clear in answering Matt's question that I don't have any independent information on the origin of the YouTube video, but obviously they were the first ones to post on Twitter about it, which is an indication, but again, I don't know, I don't have any independent information.
And then, wait, sorry, can I keep going? Because look, the Russians have repeatedly accused the United States government of interfering in Ukraine's politics. The U.S. government has, to some degree, made reciprocal claims about Russia. Does not the fact that U.S. diplomats purportedly are discussing who should and should not be in a Ukrainian government hint at some possibility of U.S. interference here?
Absolutely not. It should be no surprise that U.S. officials talk about issues around the world. Of course we do. That's what you do. That's what diplomats do, and discuss especially issues where we've been closely engaged. You know, the secretary met with the opposition this weekend. He stopped by a meeting with the foreign minister. It's up to the people of Ukraine, including officials from both sides, to determine the path forward. But it shouldn't be a surprise that there are discussions about events on the ground.
This was more than discussions, though. This was two top U.S. officials that are on the ground discussing a plan that they have to broker a future government and bringing officials from the UN to kind of seal the deal. This is more than the U.S. trying to make suggestions. This is the U.S. midwife.
I know there's only a handful of us on right now, but does everybody know this is from 2014, not from now. I don't know if you can tell the age difference, but yeah, this is from 2014. Same kind of discussions, like
the process.
Well, Elise, you're talking about.
And this is how it was all set up to today, right? Like this is how we got set up. Was 2014 help really get us going along for right now?
Private diplomatic conversation. Those happen all the time. Of course, as part of private diplomatic conversations, there are discussions about what involvement the UN can have, what involvement or engagement should happen on the ground. That shouldn't be a surprise. Of course, these things are being discussed. It doesn't change the fact that it's up to the people on the ground. It is up to the people of Ukraine to determine what the path forward is.
But you're clearly trying to influence what they decide. I mean, one of the quotes is, and this is attributed to Ambassador Pyatt, I think you reaching out to him, Klitschko, helps with the personality management among the three, and it gives you also a chance to move fast on all this stuff and put us behind it before they all sit down and he explains why he doesn't like it. That's not, oh, you know, let them figure this out. That's, gee, let's try to do this so that he won't, you know, decide he doesn't like this plan.
Well, Arshad, it's not a secret that we're engaged with what's happening on the ground. I mean, the secretary met with the opposition this weekend. He also met with the foreign minister. As part of those discussions, you engage with what's happening, what the recommendations are. They're going to choose to do it or they're not. But that's, of course, what you discuss in any meeting or conversation regardless.
I want to go back to...
But the bottom line here is that you do have an opinion about what certain people should, what role certain people should what role you think is best for certain people to play, correct? I mean, you do have, that is an opinion of the United States. Doesn't mean that you're going to foist that or force it on the people of Ukraine, but you do have an opinion, correct?
Well, Matt, I would caution everybody,
correct?
One moment, we're talking about a couple of minutes from a recorded call.
Right.
That doesn't reflect every conversation that's
No.
happened, every debate that's happened, every internal conversation that's happened.
No, you're right, you're absolutely right. But you do have, here is a case where an official, two officials are talking about a preference for what one opposition or several opposition leaders should do, whether they should be in or stay out of the government. Is that not correct? So you do have an opinion about what you think would be best.
Well,
and I'm not sure that that's so.
I'm not.
That's
We have
bad.
opinions about a range of issues. That shouldn't be a surprise.
So here's my. So I would just then. So when you get a question about whether you think it would be good or bad for politician X or Y in country X or Y to run for office, for any office, I don't think that it is honest for you to say, no, we don't have an opinion, and that's completely up to the people of country
Matt,
X.
there's a
And I specifically mean, in this case, I'm talking about Egypt.
Sure. Well, let
Because
me
you
just
do have an
make
opinion.
one comment here. There is a difference between private discussions that happen in the interagency process, in the building, and what we convey publicly as a U.S. government. And we have a responsibility to convey what our position is. Of course, you're discussing a range of options on a range of issues.
But if you-
That's what you do as
I'm
a
sorry,
diplomat.
if you're saying privately behind the scenes that you're cooking up a deal, and then you're saying publicly that this is up for Ukrainians to decide, those are two totally different things. I understand that diplomatic discussions are sensitive and you don't want everything to come out, but those are two totally different positions.
Elise, what do you think happens behind closed doors when people are discussing issues internally through
This
the
is
interagency?
not discussing issues. This is talking about a deal that the U.S. was cooking up.
I think I would disagree with you. I think you're overstating and over-qualifying a couple of minutes from a privately recorded phone call.
I want to go back to the issue about.
Phone call now.
I'm done, Arshad.
I want to go
Next.
back to the issue of divergences with Europe and what to do about it.
Oh man, that was that was fantastic.
I mean, obviously, the
Done,
language
Arshad.
that Assistant Secretary Noonan used suggests a fairly high degree of frustration. So, what is behind that? What is it that you want to be done that the Europeans are not falling in line with?
I think I just answered this. I mean, obviously, we work very closely with the EU, and specifically on this issue in recent weeks, as given how much prominence it's received, but how important it is, a priority to us and a priority to the EU. So we've been in close discussions with them. We've been working closely with them. This discussion is about events that happened days and days ago. So just remember that for contextual purposes.
Last week.
Really, days and days ago. I mean, it is days and days ago, I suppose, but it's not
Technically,
like
it's days and
it's
days
not
ago.
like it's ancient history. This
But
is
she
very
says
recent.
Technically, it's days and days ago. Oh, she's fantastic. All right. Let's see what the live look like. Curfew would be in effect. Curfew was in effect last time we looked over there, so it's now 8 o'clock. Curfew is well into effect. It looks pretty quiet. A lot of people chatting up on their live chat. Everybody's got an opinion. Korean, Chinese, Portuguese. Everybody in the world's got an opinion right now. Which is fair. I mean, everybody has an opinion on something that can affect the world quite quickly, right? Quite quickly, this could take off and affect us all. So, people are right to have their opinions. People are right to protest. I hope protests happen on all anti-war fronts. We need big protests, and I'm for a general strike, so I'm obviously for anti-war protests, please. And tons were happening today. I hope to review that tomorrow night on my Sunday interview night. But we're gonna be talking protests. We're gonna be talking rallies. We're gonna be talking riots and strikes tomorrow on a big review day, and I am looking forward to it. All right, I got enough caffeine in me with the yerba mate. So let us start the second half, and also that's the first half. Start the second half while also stretching and doing some yoga. I'm gonna pull the headphones and mute myself for bits, and then pause and go into discussions as we go. But I'm gonna try to stretch and do this, and we'll stop and talk health if you guys have questions or you want to talk health. If you want to take a break and blaze and stretch with me, I encourage you to. I'll take you through my little stretch, pre-work stretch, usually right around now. Usually right around this time of day, I'll do a long pre-stretch before I go in and bartend. And yeah, let's get the second half started. I will be stopping for 4 or 5 minutes to get the clips going, clips out, and where did I want to start? We just did Ukraine, so let's stick away from Ukraine for a minute, huh? I wanted to play this interview. This is the People's Party. I still believe the People's Party and the Green Party are viable parties. Like I say always, I believe in voting third party. I am very big on voting third party. I think an independent party, which meaning not a Republican or Democrat. I don't mean straight up independent. A third party. If we get some handful of good candidates and we don't have corporate power in those parties, then I think we can have a true third party come up and be viable within the next election cycle, like literally by 2024. It's possible. Maybe I'm not saying a presidential candidate, but I'm saying you can have many Congress, you could have several Congress, or you could have several governors, or you could have several of a party in a 2-year cycle if we get the right system. Now, the People's Party is one of those parties that could be one of those systems that deliver really good candidates. Right now, there's some things going on, and we're going to take a look at 2 different ways. Nick Brana is the head. He's the one with the allegations. This interview was cringe as fuck. I'm not going to lie. This was hard to watch, and that's why I'm going to watch it again for some reason. And then I'm going to react to a new video that I have not watched with Sabby Sabs. So I feel like she's a more calm, level-headed person, so I wanted to see her take. I have not seen that one. I have seen this one. This is cringe as fuck, and we're going to give it a shot, guys. Sorry. Sorry for the swearing. Sorry for watching something that's going to make you kind of cringe and get you a little upset, but... right? And like I said, I'm going to pull the headphones and probably mute myself because it's going to be an echo if I don't.
I hope everybody's... I sent Nick Brana the video link for this about 5 or 6 minutes ago. I don't see him here yet. So, okay. He just texted me that he's on his way. So let's wait for Nick to join us. Said he's on his way. So waiting for Nick to join us to discuss my reporting into... Nope, he hasn't backed out. He just texted me that he's on his way. So just a couple minutes late. I sent him the link about 5 or 6 minutes before the interview. So all good that he's not here yet. It's been a busy day. I'm going on vacation tomorrow. So I've been trying to prepare for that, as well as some other things. So hope everybody's having a good day. I'm not going to start on the story until he gets here. You know what? Actually, I was honestly with him just going to start by reading his statement. So I guess I could read that before he gets here, since I was just going to read his statement first while he was here. So this is the statement that Nick Brana had put out on Wednesday in response to an allegation of sexual harassment by a subordinate at the People's Party. I think it's important to read. It's a long statement, but I'm going to read the full thing just so you could have the context if you haven't read it. The headline, because this was on their website, is People's Party Blocks Liberal Takeover Attempt, an address to our members by Nick Brana, the chair of People's Party. My friends, I have been accused of sexual harassment. These allegations are false and politically motivated. There is no evidence to substantiate them. In fact, following a thorough investigation, my accuser admitted that there is no evidence to substantiate them. We had been in a consensual relationship that she had initiated. The accuser made allegations against me to the board in December, 1 week before the start of the National Organizing Committee. Immediately, there were red flags. Mixed in with the allegations were demands for professional advancement and veiled threats to the board that she could go public and attempt to destroy the party if her demands weren't met. When she made these serious accusations, The board acted immediately and appointed a committee of 3 board members to investigate. After taking written statements, interviewing both of us separately, and examining the evidence, the committee concluded that the allegations did not have merit and were a politically motivated attempt to remove me. They discovered that the 2 board members who had confided to others that they had long sought to remove me and take my position had orchestrated the allegations with the accuser and a contractor. Before anyone had investigated the veracity of her allegations, they treated them as a foregone conclusion and personally called and lobbied every member of the board to remove me, the first democratically elected chair of this party, whom you, the membership, chose. Instead of running against me in the last year's interim chair election of this year's National Committee chair election, they tried to remove me through false allegations. The People's Party is a populist party. These board members wanted to convert it into a more liberal and woke party. They had already begun reorienting the party's message away from economic populism and towards identity politics, a transformation that alarmed many volunteers. They were supported by contractors who abused their positions of authority in the party to attack our own volunteers, delegates, and even Ralph Nader, who spoke at the opening meeting of the National Organizing Committee as sexist, racist, and white supremacists for seeking to build class solidarity. The liberal faction opposed allowing our membership to democratically decide the party's position on COVID vaccine mandates, going as far as attempting to shut down a party-wide vote and censor and cancel volunteers who discussed it in Slack. They even responded to Rodrigo's personal story of suffering a vaccine injury. Rodrigo is his father, Nick's father. Bell's palsy, by alleging that it hadn't actually happened. They sought to replace our universalist message of healthcare, college, and housing for all with partitioned messages for different identity groups, a staple of Democratic Party campaigns. They were fundamentally reorienting the party away from its populist mission of uniting the left and right against the establishment, a mission they derided as building a, quote, red-brown alliance and economic reductionism. Hold on. Sorry that this is long, but in fairness, I'm going to read the whole thing. This group of board members also sought to remove any and all accountability from paid contractors. Paula Jean Swearingen was hired as our West Virginia State Director, but failed to bring in a single volunteer of National Organizing Committee delegate during her 6 months with the party. Sabrina Pena-Young represented herself as a populist when she was interviewed for our communications director position, but promoted a liberal message after being hired. Sabrina's woke attacks on many of us were so abrasive that dozens of grievances were filed against her, more than everyone else in the party combined, culminating in a petition with dozens of signatures demanding that she be dismissed. Despite their failure to meet basic contractual responsibilities and their hostility to volunteers, the minority board members protected them from so much as a reprimand, a dereliction of fiduciary and ethical duty in managing these paid contractors. Almost done. Other members of the board and I were told that any attempt to intervene in the hijacking of the party's message and purpose, including holding a party-wide vote on vaccine mandates, would be construed as, quote, retaliation against the accuser in further acts of collusion between her and those on the board. When the hostile members of the board and contractors realized that the investigation was not going their way, they encouraged the accuser to escalate her claims. The accuser's original complaint had not even used the words, quote, sexual harassment, but they told her to allege rape. This shocked the investigative committee, and one of the members later told me, every time I spoke with her, I got a different story. Every time I spoke with you, I heard the same thing.
Sorry, that's just, I gotta say something before they get started here. I'm gonna toast one up and start stretching again, but all right, guys, this is about to get crazy and cringe, and it starts out with nothing but just a weird, awkward feeling, and I really hope something happens with this whole situation, because I want the People's Party to work. I want the Green Party to work. I want the Libertarian Party to work. I want other parties. I wish America had 5 or 6 parties. I really do. And I would 5-6 parties gives us an opportunity for one or two of those parties to not be corporate owned. So let's blaze one up and stretch and watch this cringe as fuck shit. Oh my god, this is about to get crazy, guys. I don't even like. It's so brutal that I don't know how I'm going to watch it a second time except for getting stoned and stretching.
Another member of the investigative committee put a list of dozens of inconsistencies between her accounts. The original investigation was supposed to last about a week, but because it had not arrived at the predetermined conclusion sought by the hostile board members, they prolonged it week after week for 2 months, pressuring committee members to alter their conclusions, attempting to censor and expel committee members who objected to the political motives behind the allegations, fabricating the charge of retaliation for supporting a party-wide vote on vaccine mandates, and most seriously engaging in a sustained campaign to replace the legal board of the organization with a partial one that subtracted Rodrigo and me, an attempt that our general counsel affirmed was illegal. Had there been any actual evidence, the investigation would have concluded quickly. Because there was none, they resorted to manufacturing the new charges, further revealing their political motives. But the more her allegations fell apart, the more brazen the hostile factions on the board became. They abandoned their responsibilities in other areas of the party, including organizing, tech, and finance, and focused obsessively on an attempt to remove me. Meanwhile, they were also trying to enact their liberal agenda on the National Organizing Committee. They inserted a provision in the draft charter of the People's National Committee, which would have allowed registered Democrats to control every seat on about 40 People's Party state committee and a supermajority on our national committee, effectively inviting Democratic Party infiltrators. When populist delegates overwhelmingly struck down their provision, they were furious. They had realized that our members and National Organizing Committee delegates are overwhelmingly populist, and they were the outliers. Outraged, this hostile faction of board members drew up a plan to purge dozens of populist leaders from states across the party, beginning with me and proceeding to the other national board members and the state delegates who have voted against them, an action that would have destroyed the party. Nick's populist NOC, quote, NOC coalition has to go, they stated. Despite not having the votes to remove me and in opposition to our general counsel, they had resolved to do it illegally. This was so alarming to the remaining national board members that they brought it to my attention and that of the general counsel. I got 3 paragraphs to go. Apologies, it's long. At the same time, whistleblowers at the accuser's last place of employment told us that she had done the same thing at their organization that she was presently doing with us, accusing board members of sexual harassment and abuse, using it to split the board and demand professional advancement. It also turned out that she was friends and former colleagues with Shahid Buttar's accuser, who had sought to sink his congressional challenge to Nancy Pelosi and had even tried to get us to hire his accuser. The remaining board members and our general counsel decided that we had to take action to safeguard the party before they attempted to purge the party of populist leaders, delegates, and volunteers. We also knew that we couldn't let them continue to abuse volunteers, shift our message and mission to identity politics, and deny party members the democratic right to vote and decide the party's position on vaccine mandates. So we took action to remove them with the guidance of multiple lawyers and law firms. Having failed to derail the party away from the populist mission that has galvanized thousands nationwide, we can expect relentless attacks on the party and me. Expect those who are removed to attack on DNC-aligned and billionaire-funded media outlets that will have long sought to bring down the People's Party, especially since forced to vote. As long as I am with the People's Party, I will never submit to threats and blackmail. We will meet these attackers head on, because this is what the establishment does to people, parties, and organizations who threaten them. We will keep our mission sharply in focus and work steadfastly towards building a new major populist party free of corporate money. To the many dozens of people who have reached out with solidarity, encouragement, and defiance in the face of these attacks, thank you. Together we are building a new populist party, and we will transform this country. So that is Nick Brana's full statement. There you are. Hey, Nick.
Hi, Joe.
I don't want to be like white about it. Feel the attitude when these guys start out. Feel the atmosphere when they get going here. It starts out with such this atmosphere in a row, like leading people maybe that's the one thing I know is I can read people, and sometimes I just don't give a fuck. So if I'm rude to you as a bartender, if you see me like, hey, you were a dick to me as a bartender because I was in the weeds and you were being an idiot. That's why, okay? If I'm trying to take care of 40, 50 people and you're being an idiot asking me 100 questions, I'm going to be an ass to you. Sorry. Anyhow, so yeah, the atmosphere here, the attitude, I can read people. And this attitude, like both of them are starting out with a chip on their shoulder, I feel like. And you just feel it so fast. I think I'm barely going to get my stretch routine in. Again, I'm doing a stretch routine that I do for pre-work. This is for bartenders and servers who have hip, foot, knee, shoulder pain, back pains. This is to help kind of stretch you out before and after the shift. And I'll be doing this on Friday and Saturday night after the shift. We can go over, you can tell me if I'm doing something wrong, if I'm doing something right, if you hate it, if you love it, you think I can help my back out, you think you can help yourself out with this, whatever, let's talk about it. So this is our news and stretching segment. The Movement for the People's Party, trying to be a party, getting ready for a campaign year, and now they're locked in scandal for the moment. So let's go back to that. I will mute myself so there's no.
I planned on reading the statement with you while you were here, but that's okay. That you were a few minutes late. So Nick Brana, National Chair of the People's Party, joining me. Obviously, I've done some reporting with Status Quo on you this week, so I'm glad you could join me to discuss all of this. I read your full statement, so if people didn't read the statement, now you know what Nick wrote on, what was that, Wednesday, a couple days ago. So I want to start with just kind of a couple baselines here. Can you confirm that an internal investigation at MPP was launched in December after a subordinate that you said you have said you're were in a relationship with had made an allegation?
This is a part of a much wider and longer standing campaign to reorient the party.
That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking you, can you confirm that
there was? And okay. I'd like to begin, Jordan, as well, by saying, can you confirm the conflicts of interest that you've had in covering this story that you haven't so far?
So Nick,
the fact that you are a personal friend of the accuser.
So Nick, you're not going to filibuster. So if you're not, if you're not going to answer the questions,
Jordan,
and you're going to try to deflect,
are you a personal friend of the accuser or not?
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are. That is a lie. That is a lie. Jordan, have you been accused of your own allegation that was false?
Nick, are you going to deflect? Or you're going to answer questions?
I am asking you.
No, Nick, you're not the journalist. I'm a journalist.
Reported your conflicts of interest.
I'm not a friend with the accuser, and you're trying to deflect. So Jordan, if you're going, excuse me, I am no. This is not your show. This is not your show. So if you're going to try and if you're going to deflect
right now about being a personal friend of the accuser,
I'm not a personal friend of the accuser. I have literally met the woman who accused you twice in my life.
False.
One was at an event.
That's not what she says.
That's not what she says?
Correct.
Okay. So are you going actually to answer my questions, or you're just going to try and deflect?
I will. I just want your viewership and you to disclose the conflicts of interest that you have
Nick,
in this
I have
story.
No conflicts of interest. None.
And perhaps why
do you have evidence of
excuse
me, do you have evidence of conflicts of interest?
What she told me. Correct.
When did she tell you this?
She told me this in the fall of this year and in the summer of last year. The fall of last year and the summer of last year.
Through writing, through smoke signal? How did she tell you this?
She told it to me in numerous conversations.
Okay. So I get your playbook. So can I start? Can I start asking questions?
That's a rather material part of this.
Can I start asking questions or no?
It is.
Okay. Because this isn't Jimmy's show, so there will be no softballs.
Have you disclosed that you've attacked us previously at the People's Party and me in particular?
How so?
That you wrote an article that stated that I was not a part of our revolution, that I was in fact not employed at our revolution. Are you affirming or denying that?
I've read a lot of articles. You'd have to gin up my memory. Seriously.
I think you know exactly which one I'm talking about.
Hey, Nick, can you confirm that I covered
I have W-2s at our revolution, and yet you said I wasn't employed there. This isn't your first time attacking the People's Party, Jordan.
Nick, I'll end the
not your
interview.
first time
I'll
dealing
end.
with this
I'll
issue.
end the interview if you're not going to answer any questions and just read
That's
the
up to
story.
you. I just want your viewership.
Are you going to
know what your
answer
conflicts
question?
of
Are you
interest
going to
are.
answer any questions or not?
Yeah, absolutely.
good.
I'm happy to because there's nothing here, and the investigation cleared me.
No, based on the record sources, including people who were investigating you.
Have you talked to the other two investigators at the beginning who submitted their conclusions? No, you have not. You should probably reach out to them. I'll put you in touch with them.
Okay. Nick, I'm going to have to start muting you if you're not going to let me ask questions.
Of course. Just making your viewers aware.
Okay. So now that my viewers are aware that Nick Brana says I'm friends with his accuser and that I hit the People's Party, even though I've covered multiple People's Party events in person, conferences, we've established that. Okay.
Is it true that you reported that I was a part of our revolution or not?
I don't know what you're talking about, Nick. And stop deflecting. I'm not playing your game. And I know you've been lawyered up to say this shit. It ain't going to work. So I'm going to start answering my questions, asking questions.
I hope you will.
If you don't want to answer, we'll go from there. So
yeah, I hope you will.
Nick, in your statement, you said that, let me get the statement here. In your statement, you said, quote, when she made these serious accusations, the board acted immediately and appointed a committee of 3 board members to investigate. After taking written statements, interviewing both of us separately, and examining the evidence, the committee concluded that the allegations did not have merit and were a politically motivated attempt to remove me. They discovered that 2 board members who had confided to others that they had long sought to remove me and take my position had orchestrated the allegation with the accuser and contractor. So in your statement, you said that there was 3 board members who were part of a special committee investigating you. I have two board members, as well as another source, saying that later on a 4th person was added to the special investigative committee, Todd Gellin. So why does your statement say there was 3 people investigating you when there was 4?
Because you said it originally. There were 3 to begin with. Have you talked to the other 2?
Excuse me. I, in my reporting, said a 4th was added later. So why does your statement say that there was only 3 MPP board members?
There were 3 originally. The investigation concluded, and the partial board.
Nick, wait.
Hold on. You want an answer, or you don't want an answer?
You're not
Jordan?
answering.
Tell
you're
me.
not answering.
No, yes, I am. You just don't like the answer.
Your public statement said there was 3 board members investigating.
Correct.
Was there a 4th later added?
I was just answering your question. You want the answer or not?
Go ahead.
Excellent. There was a 4th added after it had already submitted its conclusions. And the reason that 4th was added was for the broader politically motivated attempt to replace me, shift the party's message from populism to liberalism, and oppose the party taking a stance on COVID vaccine mandates, opposing them.
So if the 3 of those members had already reached the conclusion, then why did you not provide that to me when I asked questions? Why did you not provide any evidence that a conclusion had already been presented and that those 3 board members?
It's in my statement. The other members would be happy. You haven't reached out to them. In fact, you never asked me to get in touch with them.
You issued a statement. A statement is an evidence. Excuse me. Excuse me.
Did you
ask them?
A
statement is not evidence.
To speak with them.
I'm asking
to speak with. Did you ask?
Why would I ask to speak with other board members when there's already multiple board members on the record saying? I'll just read their comments. Colin, if we could go to the first tweet. Regina Clark, one of the board members that was removed. She says that statement was not true. In our special investigative committee meetings, all 3 original members stated that we believed the accuser. When the 3 of us then discussed it with the rest of the partial board, the full board is 10. The partial board was minus you and your father, because obviously you couldn't be in meetings.
Told you, like, it gets right up into it, huh? Wow. Yeah, it gets right into it. They get right at each other. They don't really, it is not really a conversation. There's only a few more minutes of this, and then we'll go to Sabby Sab's actual interview. But this, it's intense, guys. Like, they go right at each other. 2 people who have both been accused of the same thing, basically. And again, allegations are hard. When they come up to somebody who's a truth teller or somebody who's trying to do something anti-establishment, it's hard to see where fabrication or, you know, toxic masculinity starts and ends. And I usually have to take women's opinion on this, and when they tell me somebody seems like a toxic asshole, then I go, wow, maybe they are, and then I have to reevaluate things and not cancel them, but not pay attention as much. Yeah, let's get back at it.
When an investigation into you was discussed, the partial board agreed that actions needed to be taken based on our findings of sexual harassment over Title VII. Later, a fourth person was added to the investigative committee over concerns about the integrity of two members of the committee and their communication with Nick Brana. Then you have Thomas Royko, another board member. To be clear, he was not part of the committee investigating you, but he was part of meetings in which the investigation was discussed. He
and
says,
was also one of the ones
I'm not done reading the quote.
Along with Todd Jelen.
Yeah, I'm not done reading the quote. Quote, that's not true. Flat out lie as far as
Just
I was
adding
aware.
the context that you have a habit of not adding.
Okay. Quote, that's not true. Flat out lie as far as I was aware. Royko said the statements that he is making is riddled with lies. So there's either they're lying or you're lying, because you're saying the investigative committee already reached a conclusion that there was no merit in the woman's accusation and that it was politically motivated. But you have a member of the special investigative committee saying that's not true, that they did have findings. And we also have a document, Nick, and let's go, Colin, if we could go further down to the February 19th emergency meeting petition, if you'll allow me to read this. This was sent on February 19th, which was Saturday, so 6 or 7 days ago. It's signed by 5 board members. The title is Emergency Meeting of the Partial Board of Directors National Coordinator Circle. And they, in this, pursuant to Section 9 of the Interim Operating Procedure of the People's Party, also known as Movement for a People's Party, a Michigan nonprofit corporation, the undersigned members of the Board of Directors of People's Party, also known as the National Coordinator Circle, and hereon referred to as the Board of Directors, representing at least 40% of all members of the Board of Directors, hereby petition the partial board, minus Nick and Rod, Chair Michelle Ramirez, to convene an emergency meeting of the partial board of directors, minus Nick and Rod, to occur within 24 hours from the partial board chair's receipt of this petition for the limited purpose of reviewing and discussing the recommendations of the special committee investigation into allegations of sexual harassment, improper behavior, and subsequent retaliation by the board chair, Nick Brana. That was Saturday. So how is it that an investigation
that I described?
Wait, I'm not done asking. How is it that there was already a conclusion drawn that there was no merit of the entire 4-person special investigative committee if on Saturday, 5 board members, 2 of them who were part of that special investigative committee, were asking for an emergency next day meeting to make recommendations? You're saying they already concluded there was no merit. They're talking about recommendations to discuss. That doesn't make sense.
They had concluded. And then Jordan, you just read my statement. The answer is in the statement. They politically.
Your statement is not evidence. A statement is not, excuse me. A statement is not evidence, Nick.
Oh.
A statement is not evidence.
A statement making accusations against me of sexual harassment is not evidence either. So, Jordan, let me ask you, where is the evidence?
Excuse me.
Where is the evidence?
Nick, no, you're not going to do that.
No, I'm answering.
I have not reported.
I
have not reported.
Where is the
excuse
evidence?
me. I have not reported that you, Nick Brana, have sexually harassed anyone.
Did they provide you with evidence?
Excuse me. That you, Nick Brana, have sexually done anything to anyone. I have, to be clear to be clear to the audience, because I did not report details and I did not report whether it's true, whether it's not.
You never will, because they don't exist.
Okay, but Nick,
isn't that at the heart of the matter, Jordan?
I don't know. I have no idea. That's why I didn't report it.
You're the journalist.
I report,
right?
Okay, Nick, I don't know if you realize this because you're not a journalist. If you're going to do a serious investigation into sexual harassment or more, you don't do it in 3 days. So what I reported, which you've confirmed, is you were under internal investigation. That's what I reported. And what I'm reporting now is there seem to be inconsistencies with the process for the removal of board members. I have not reported that you have sexually harassed. In every instance, the word alleged has been used. So you could keep on going on that, you know, this is a liberal woke mob attack on you. But nowhere in my reporting has there been anything, specific allegations, or that you are guilty. So if that's what this is about.
What's important? Isn't that what's important?
Well, no, I think it's fairly important as a news. I think it's fairly important. I think it's fairly important as a news story that you're under investigation and that 5 board members were removed abruptly the same exact day that they called for that emergency.
So where's the evidence for the claim?
Same exact day. The same
Where's the
exact
evidence?
day.
You don't.
No,
okay.
Nick,
You're not asking.
You're not asking
You don't
the
want
question.
to exactly.
You're not asking
You don't
the
want to
question.
answer the questions.
The
You
same
don't want to answer
exact.
the
The
questions.
same.
This
Nick,
is hilarious coming
Nick,
from
let
you.
me ask you.
He's very abrasive, right? Like, he's very standoffish. It does, like, I don't know if this is all you see from this person. You have to be like guilty as shit, right? Like, guilty AF right here, bam, knock the gavel, because that's what you look like, man. This makes you look guilty. Why did you even come on this interview? You're just gonna attack him the whole time. Like, it has 8,000 views, which lucky for him. Status quo, guys. If you want to watch this later, watch the whole thing. We're about to watch his, reactions afterwards. But status quo, Jordan Sheridan, we hit him up at least once or twice a week, right? I mean, probably twice at least.
Frankly, hilarious.
Nick,
you were
let me ask you.
fired from TYT over having your own affair, which you claim you were accused of rape, and you were fired for that. This is unbelievable. I can't. Now you're trying
to spin and deflect
with less credibility to report this. But I suppose your personal friendship with the accuser explains that.
You know what, Nick?
Is this your effort to regain credibility or cachet with the establishment, Jordan?
You know what, Nick?
With Ryan Grimm, are you still seeking that job with The Intercept? Is that why he keeps retweeting everything that you've posted? The people who are attacking us are the people who have consistently done so. And
you know what,
who
Nick?
work for DNC-aligned and billionaire-funded media, Jordan.
Oh, man. You could just see, he's like, all right, just keep, all right. Yep, all right. Okay.
Those are the people that you're in league with.
I'll be attacked for this, but I don't really give a damn. I'm ending the interview because this isn't going anywhere. So,
like bam, done, son. Yeah. So it was an aggravating thing. His questions were fairly aggressive, and his responses were extremely aggressive. So he didn't set the tone very well. Maybe that wasn't the best interview for him to do. Maybe he should have had the female that he works with pretty regularly, Tina, I believe. He should have had her do the interview, but that's what we got out of it. That's where we were. And that's not all that there is to say. So we will move on and try Savvy Sabs for the same topic, the same perspectives here. Well, different perspectives. But we will give Nick Brana a shot, I believe. Yeah, she has him on for like 15 minutes or something. Oh, no. She has him on the whole time? No. She has him on for like half the show. We were going to watch for 15 minutes. That's what it was. Sorry. All right.
Chat. Oh, there's a lot of chats. Lots and lots of chats. I don't know if I can go all the way up to the top here.
Oh, shit. Gotta get through that.
Oh, shout out to Kid Cabello from Hardlands. Keep on doing that. Group will be infiltrated. I hear what you're saying. I hear you. Oh, Nick is here. Okay, here I go. Let me add him to the screen. Hello, welcome.
Hey, Savvy. Great to be with you.
Already. Again, I watched the other one several times. Cringe as fuck. Whew. This one I've not seen. Look at the atmosphere. Look at the attitude. Look at the freaking ambiance of this freaking interview. This is probably going to be an interview. And she actually has him on for half the show. I was only going to do 15 minutes. Again, this is reactory, so I don't know how long it'll actually go. But yeah, this starts out way different, right?
All right. I do have to, let me make sure I put the screen up on the right. Okay, I did. Okay. First and foremost, I do want to let everyone know, like, Nick and I have never met before. So this is the first time, like, we're actually meeting. Just want to put that out there. I, for one, am 100% for third parties. I know if you're new to my channel, you may not know that, but if you do watch me, you do know that. I talk about that a lot. I'm against the duopoly. And I also want to make it known because I think it's only.
Maybe that's why I like her. I do tend to listen to people that don't piss me off, and meaning that they agree with me more than they disagree with me. You know, like I say, if you can find somebody who agrees with you 75% of the time, you're doing pretty good. And I agree with Sabby quite a lot, so that's why I like watching her. That's why you'll see me clip her often and check her out very regularly. Sabby Sabs, off the Revolutionary Blackout Network. Please subscribe. Please give her props. Please watch her show on a regular basis. We only do clips every couple of days, so please check her out.
Fair that you guys know this, that I did find out recently who the accuser is. I cannot mention their name. There's things that go along with this, but I think it's only fair to let you guys know that I am aware of who that person is. I've reached out to the people involved. As you guys saw a couple of days ago, one of the volunteers came on. Obviously, I reached out to Nick and I reached out to the accuser as well. They are not ready to come forward. So just letting everybody know that I reached out to the parties that are involved. So with that being said, I want to let everybody know I am not judge and jury. I am not. This is me simply asking questions. There are certain questions that I do need to ask, but I want you to know that I'm not here to tell you whether or not someone is innocent or guilty. That's not really my place, but I am here to ask the questions, and I wanted to make sure that everybody gets to say their part. So, Nick, I want to go ahead and get started with, I want to hear from you. So it was reported that you were under investigation for sexual harassment, and some of the board members I was able to talk to one of the board members, but some of the board members said that they were removed, or they feel they were removed because they believe the accuser. And I wanted to give you a chance to respond to that.
That's not accurate. They were removed because they drew up a plan which was illegal, which was found by our general counsel to be illegal, to remove me.
So I don't know the time frame of these either, just for the record. I think Jordan usually does stuff in the early afternoon, where Sadly usually does stuff at like 5 to 8 at night. So it says streamed 15 hours ago. What would that put it at? 14, like 8, 9 o'clock. It's usually goes from when you end. So 2 hours, so 7 to 9 is when she did it. Jordan, I'm gonna guess, was like 4 or 5. So he settled himself, he calmed himself, he said, shit, I gotta redeem myself. And he came on here with a much better attitude. Let's give him a chance. Because that last one was cringe, man. That was so bad.
And then to remove other members of the board and dozens of delegates in the National Organizing Committee with whom they disagreed with politically on the direction of the party. They wanted it to go in a more liberal direction, whereas the party is more populist and has been for a long time. And so that was the motive that they had, and the reason, in fact, that with our general counsel at the People's Party, we were so shocked to learn that, in fact, that's what they had in mind. This was an action that, if they had gone through with it, to purge dozens of people across the party, leaders in states across the party on the National Organizing Committee, where we're currently creating the charter for the National Committee, it would have destroyed the party. And that was so shocking that that was the final straw. But that was just, there's obviously a lot of context before that I'm happy to go into.
When you say that they wanted to take the party in a liberal direction, can you explain like what you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. the messaging of the party had been shifting for a few months preceding these events. In particular, it corresponded with us bringing on additional contractors who were working with the party, who had a more identity politics focused kind of vision for the party and message for the party. And they were using the social media and the communications platforms to communicate that. Now, we are, as a populist party, there are thousands of people across the country who have been inspired with that message, who've come in on that basis, who've donated on that basis, who have volunteered on that basis, and they were very alarmed with that shift in the message. And so when that was brought to the attention, that became increasingly evident, including one particular contractor who in our Slack, which we use as a team communications platform, was attacking volunteers continuously, calling them racists and white supremacists and sexists, really frivolously. Every single disagreement was reduced to an identity politics attack. And it resulted in that individual receiving dozens of grievances, that paid contractor, and also culminated in a petition with dozens of people signing for her removal. But individuals on the board who opposed the remaining populists who supported this transition to a more liberal message and orientation for the party and mission for the party, away from class solidarity and uniting left and right, they opposed any accountability for contractors, and they protected that individual who was abusing volunteers. And again, that was part of the reason that that we ended up having to really take the action of remove those. And I'll say again, with the guidance and counsel and advice of multiple lawyers and law firms, including our general counsel, who determined that what they were trying to do was not only illegal, but it was really incredibly morally unconscionable, and it would have destroyed the party. And I can give you other examples of that shift. There's two other big examples. Just let me know if you want me to go into them. I'm happy to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. The first is that at the same time, while these allegations had been made against me, which within a couple weeks, the committee determined by majority that really the allegations were not substantiated. The accuser was asked for evidence repeatedly and did not provide any, was not able to provide any, and ultimately stated that in fact she did not have any for the specific allegations that she had made. Following that, though, the investigation as a result of that, it was only supposed to last.
This is going to be a hard issue for Savvy to absorb, I think. This is rough. And yeah.
A week or two. And it was a thorough investigation that would involve interviews of her and other people who'd been kind of tangentially around us, and also taking written statements from us. And so the organization did its due diligence, and I think that was appropriate. Anytime there's an accusation like that, it needs to be taken very seriously. And so I don't hold any of the colleagues who decided to launch that investigation at fault whatsoever. They took the appropriate action with that. It's what happened next and what we discovered on the special committee, and what the committee that was investigating found that really was the issue. They found that there wasn't evidence for her charges against me, but rather that the charges had been essentially manufactured in a call between two board members and two contractors in early December. And at that time, they also concluded that in fact it was politically motivated. They used the word coup, two of them. And that really changed the course of the investigation, because then an investigation that was supposed to last only 2 weeks and presented those initial findings of no fault, no merit to these claims, was then politically hijacked in a way that it hadn't even been before, even though it was politically motivated from the beginning. And it was extended week after week after week for 2 months, with the seeking someone else who should be interviewed, continuous revisions of recommendations, even though it had already concluded. There were the board members who were opposed to me, who wanted me removed from the onset, and the contractors as well, continuously prolonged it for political reasons. So at the same time that this was happening in January and at the end of December, we were going through the National Organizing Committee, which is a process by which we've brought together dozens of delegates from across the country to deliberate the charter and the bylaws of the party. And so they've been elected, sent from their states. There was a particular provision, some provisions that were advanced by this group of board members and contractors that were more liberal in nature, and that many people thought would compromise the party, not even just ideologically, but potentially in its ability to remain independent from Democrats and Republicans. So to give you an example, there was a provision advanced into the charter of the party that stated that.
All right, if you want to watch the whole thing, like I said, I was going to make it to the 15-minute mark. I think that was like 6 minutes of the interview. But he actually seems reasonable. The status quo, that was super cringe. That was hard to watch. And I don't know. There's a lot going on. It's always hard for these situations because you can see how somebody might be getting attacked. You can also see how these people seem kind of toxic. So it's hard to balance that. And please go ahead and watch the Sabby. It's a 2-hour. She has him on for most of the 2 hours she's on. It looks like I said, she has him on for about an hour and a half. Oh, over an hour it looks like. Over an hour she has him on. So it's a long time, and I don't have that kind of. We don't have that kind of time, right? Let's keep moving. Let's get back to it. That's not where I wanted to go. Let's go to the other side of life, right? This is someone, Luke of We Are Change. I'll hit him up every once in a week or so. He is my libertarian. I guess he's more of a Trump DeSantis person now. So right wing. I don't know. He's on Tim Pool a bunch, I guess. I don't know. But he's Ukrainian, so he has family and friends in Ukraine still. And as far as this issue goes, I bet he's as close to an American Ukrainian that I'm going to come. So I'm going to go ahead and let's start this half of the show out with him.
A very serious, dangerous escalation has just unfolded in Ukraine, and it will only get worse from here as we have a war on our hands. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. This is Luke Rudowski here of WeAreChange.org, and we have a lot of very important and serious news to get into as the United States and UK are threatening an action which Russia has announced that they will see as an act of war. The situation is getting very serious. There's a lot of other things to talk about, especially when it comes to energy policy and the ever-complex situation with China that has now allegedly scrambled jets near the Taiwan area. A lot of things to seriously talk about in this video on this independent media broadcast, and we're just going to jump right into it. And let's be honest, there's a lot of absolutely bad takes, especially by the corporate media, that's trying to incentivize a full-scale war or to sell you some Applebee's, as perfectly represented by the coverage from CNN just.
Jimmy just did a clip on that. Like, the most cringe thing you could possibly do is having an Applebee's commercial playing while you're talking about continuous coverage.
Moments ago. Yeah, I'm sure Applebee's is really happy and proud of their ad placement. CNN also just recently accidentally learned about the importance of the Second Amendment in the United States, as they're calling for the people of Ukraine to take up arms against Russians, as some media personalities are using this situation to race bait, like Cenk Uygur that just tweeted throughout this entire crazy, insane...
Cenk Uygur. Oh no. God. Oh no, Jank.
Situation that, quote, right-wingers love Putin because he's a white authoritarian leader and race allegedly has more importance to right-wingers, the nationality, that he's a white overlord. Again, absolute crazy unhinged rants. There's a lot of insanity. There's a lot of bad takes, and expect more of those, especially during very intense emotional times that we're going through right now. But let's just stick to the facts here. As of course, hours ago, the president of Russia released a video declaring a military action inside of Ukraine that would demilitarize the country. In this media broadcast, he also announced that he's doing this in order to combat right-wing extremist groups inside of Ukraine, and he launched more than just a military operation, as of course a full-scale invasion of Ukraine is happening right now, as the Russian military has significantly outgunned and outmanned the military of Ukraine, which is a significant underdog here, and has essentially implemented an insurgency-style campaign in order to fight the Russians, which is promising to be an absolute messy situation. And late last night, all the airspace has been cleared near Ukraine, and Russian military mortars and shells started raining down on Ukraine at approximately 3:30 in the morning. As of course, massive amounts of trucks, tanks, and military hardware has entered from Belarus, Crimea, eastern Russia, even parts of western Ukraine.
Again, one thing that's the far left and the far right, libertarians and progressives, can always agree on is anti-establishment war. There's probably been, like 4 wars in the history of humankind that were actually necessary. The rest are all just power-hungry horribleness. I don't know, I'm just assuming. There's almost never a war that's actually necessary. And if you can find 4, congratulations, you're a dick. I don't know. Or you're a really good researcher. Or a really good debater, but I don't feel like there's any war that's been necessary. Humans are just irrational and power hungry sometimes, and then the most narcissistic people get in power.
Paratroopers flying in as the conflict has officially begun, signaling, of course, some very troubling signs ahead. Now, before getting into other potential escalations, China, energy policy, I'm going to be doing another video later on today, as of course there's so much that I specifically want to say about this topic that I can't hear on this broadcast, but I will be saying it later on today on lukeuncensored.com, as this video is going to be continuing there. I hope to see you there later on today. If you haven't signed up yet, click the link down in the description below to find out more. Now, being someone who is very staunchly anti-war, we have to call out this current situation for what it is, and it...
See, like I said, I can agree with him. He is anti-war. He used to go to protests and rallies with gear on and be ready right there in front. So that's why I like to follow Luke of We Are Change. Luke of We Are Change. He is worth watching. I'm never going to say that the people's shows that he gets on are worth watching, but he... And I don't watch everything that he does, because he does get, his opinions can be long, but on Ukraine, I'm going to take his opinion, because he, like I said, he is a Ukrainian, I believe, yeah, I believe pretty, 99% sure he's Ukrainian. His family's from there. He's, literally visited a few times in the last 8 years, so he's sometime around 2014, and sometimes before COVID, I know for a fact. I watched the show and saw that he went and visited, so.
It is an insanely aggressive and dangerous move made by Russia that not only endangers the people of Ukraine, but the people of the world, and also the financial security of international markets that, of course, are going to be devastated by this news, especially when it comes to the energy sectors that are absolutely skyrocketing right now. And that is not the only issue we have to worry about, as we're getting news reports right now of Russian troops fighting Ukrainian troops near Chernobyl, with some people speculating and fearing that this might lead to some kind of possible radiation exposure in Europe. This situation is moving very fast.
Yeah, I've seen that today too. People are worried about Chernobyl again. That is fucking horrifying. That might be the scariest thing I've recently heard. Yeah, I have. We'll be talking about that. We can go ahead and talk about that next.
And could intervene any countries at any moment, as of course bombs just hit a Turkey ship in the Black Sea. As we know, Turkey is a part of NATO, and we have to understand very rapidly this situation could become far more disastrous than it already is.
And of course, watch out for the red flags. There'll be an op. All of a sudden, there'll be some crazy some crazy thing that happens that, like, it's the literal red line. Like, we say you can't do that, and then it'll happen. It'll happen right away. Yeah, so we'll see.
Right now, the fighting looks like it's unfolding almost everywhere in Ukraine, and we could only hope that it is contained there and de-escalates, but the likelihood of that happening now is rare, especially with some in the United States, even the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom pushing for Russia to be injected out of the SWIFT financial system, something, of course, that Biden even hinted at doing himself. This would essentially get rid of Russia from the global banking system, which Russia has stated, if is done, will be a declaration of war against it, signaling a very serious threat by Russia against the West. Those are not the only threats by Putin, as he also said to anyone who would, quote, consider interfering from the outside, quote, if you do, you will face consequences greater than any you have faced in history. This, as NATO has just ordered its commanders to prepare to defend Allied territory inside of Europe, as some people...
personal trainer and Lucy.
That's not getting any less wild, right, guys? I mean, that is intense. We are anti-war, but we are watching something that we can't quite control, we can't quite put our hands on.
And fearing that Russia will continue to invade past further than just Ukraine. Obviously, those are speculations, and I haven't seen any kind of evidence suggesting this to be true. But hundreds of warships and warplanes have been put on alert. Troop numbers have been increased on the eastern flank, and to say that the situation is tumultuous is definitely an understatement. Another thing to worry about here domestically was the recent purging of ranks inside of the U.S. military that literally saw members of the U.S. Armed Forces being kicked out because they didn't take a medical procedure that, of course, was heavily politicized. There's also the recent refocusing of the U.S. military command to be more woke, to be more inclined towards emotions and feelings, which has left a lot of people wondering what in the world is going on here, which, of course, this is the opposite approach of what Russia and China is doing. Now, what was the response from the U.S. command as soon as everything was happening? Well, Joe Biden released a letter and clarifying that he was going to speak about the situation more than 12 hours from when it happened, when, of course, the previous president was already on the national news lambasting and attacking him for, of course, his inaction on the situation. As, of course, previous President Donald Trump declared that this would have not happened during his presidency, and the optics of the current president only releasing a letter while the previous president mocks and attacks him on national television is not really good optics, to say the least, for the United States. You add this with failed American energy policy under the Biden administration that dropped the Keystone Pipeline, dropped expanding domestic drilling, dropped fracking, dropped the production of nuclear energy, and now with the price of energy going up dramatically, teetering the financial markets on the brink of collapse, we should start asking ourselves what in the world is happening here, as, of course, energy markets have skyrocketed and will only continue to skyrocket from here, as, of course, there's going to be less abundance of it, which means it's going to be costing a lot more for everyday items that we depend on that usually get shipped, which will only exacerbate the existing supply chain shortages, which are only meant to get worse here. And those are only the financial ramifications, which are bound to be affecting your life very shortly, not just at the gas pump when you're pumping fuel for your car. That is one policy that the United States has failed when it comes to preparing for all of this, as well as their failed policies that we have been warning about for a very long time, and that is specifically implementing a foreign policy which has been bringing China and Russia closer together. This, as of course moments ago we are finding out that Taiwan has been warning about Chinese fighter jets which have been intruding into their airspace, as many people fear China will be using this situation in order to invade Taiwan. The likelihood of that happening geopolitically is high, as of course China has been backing Russia in many important geopolitical situations throughout the last few years when it came to going against the West and the United States, especially with some of the West's failed policies, which have only brought Russia and China closer together and haven't geopolitically helped the United States at all. policies that, of course, we were extremely critical of, and now we have a legitimate situation that is a real threat to the United States, as even...
Good. I mean, we're just going to be more competitive, but really what should happen is that we realize that we can't just be the world bully, we're not the world police, and we put ourselves back into a position of equality instead of brute force.
And the situation in Ukraine is very complex between all of these nations, as Ukraine is a major trading partner with China. They have good relationships with each other, and this is a far more complex situation than a lot of people would like to admit. But these warning signs outside of Taiwan are extremely worrying and signal for a larger conflict that might potentially unfold very soon. There's a number of policies that the United States should have been implementing within the last few years. They haven't. In 1997, Madeleine Albright instituted a policy in the United States that sought the expansion of NATO into Eastern and Central Europe, which, according to Madeleine Albright, was essential to preventing the next war. And that foreign policy, which has been continued since 1997, has led to this disastrous situation, which could have been handled totally different. Now, of course, it's easy to criticize from here. This is not an easy situation. This is a dangerous situation. There is a possibility for this conflict to expand, to grow, to get other countries involved, and if that happens, the consequences are absolutely dire. And we can only hope and pray that things de-escalate from here. There's a lot of crazy videos and photos that I can't show you here that I will be showing on LukeUncensored.com, as well as talking about...
Yeah. So Luke's good. Check him out, guys. I would say, you know, on one of the blockchain sites or his own site, but if you're like me and you don't want to go to a specific site for a specific person, check out something like Rumble or Rockfin or something, because the independent sites are the best way to get people their full access. And I would be showing you more stuff on the independent sites, but you're allowed to say more things and you will get kicked off if I do. So I'm not looking to try to get kicked off today. We're just going to try to hang in there. All right. Oh no. What'd I do? Where is... Oh no, I didn't have it. I wanted to do Heartlands Media next, but I didn't have it set up. I apologize. This is going to take me 45 seconds. Here we go. After this commercial, of course. That's what they like to do to us, right? As soon as I figure something out, they throw a commercial in there and make sure it's a little more confusing for everybody. We want to watch the commercials for Heartlands Media. They are monetized. They do need the money. And they do good work. So if the people are monetized and they're making the money, watch the commercials. I'm not monetized. You don't need to watch my commercials. I'm a long ways from anything near that. So just go ahead and enjoy the video, enjoy the stream. Don't watch any commercials for me. Alright. Let us check out Heartlands Media today. Gave them their... I tried StreamYard, I didn't like it. So yeah, good for you guys.
Let us all do we can to build a better future.
Through this ongoing conflict and crisis that's happening in the Ukraine, there is a situation that has been unfolding. Recently, there's been a rise in radiation, especially near the Chernobyl power plant. This is the one where there was that unfortunate disaster that took place there, and right now it's under military occupation by Russian forces. Look, there is a lot of danger still at that now derelict plant, and I think it's only fair that we do pull this clip up here in regards to what is happening. I also have an article from the BBC that we'll be checking out as well. Let's play this first video phase.
This morning, the Chernobyl nuclear site in Ukraine is now under the control of Russian troops. The impacts of this takeover stretch far beyond Ukraine. That's because Chernobyl was the site of the world's worst nuclear disaster in 1986. A botched safety test at the atomic plant caused an explosion which sent clouds of nuclear material across much of Europe. Dozens of people died, and the area is still impacted. Chernobyl's position just north of Kyiv means if the plant is hit by artillery, radioactive dust could end up over Ukraine, Belarus, and other parts of Europe. And overnight, Ukrainian officials reported increased radiation levels in a number of places in the area. Here to help us understand the impact of this takeover is Seth Gray. He's on the board of the Nuclear Energy Institute and a member of the Civil Nuclear Trade Advisory Committee to the U.S. Secretary of Commerce. He's also the CEO of nuclear fuel company Lightbridge Corp. Seth, thanks so much for joining us. So first, let's just talk through what your biggest concern is now that the plant...
Watching people watch news, right? I don't know, whatever. I'm not going to go and watch CNBC. I don't have producers. These guys do. So we will let them do the work. If I would love to be a producer for somebody. You guys have a network that needs somebody. I do this for absolute love of it. But if there's a network that is independent and needs me, I'm available. I would love to find segments. I would love to find interviewers. I would love to find topics outside of the mainstream media. And hell, I'll even watch mainstream media and take it down. We could do that once in a while again. I used to take down a mainstream media segment once in a while, but for the most part, the stream gets knocked down if I do mainstream media.
...is in the hands of Russia.
Well, as long as there's no significant damage done to the plant, that there aren't very serious concerns. What I understand is that the normal Ukrainian workers are operating the facility and they are surrounded by Russian forces, so they feel like they are hostages. But I don't think there are Russian forces that are actually operating the facilities. Now, there's not that much to do there right now. The remains of the melted down reactor core are under concrete called a sarcophagus, and that's under a newer steel archway that protects the site. There's been heavy military equipment rolling through and around the area that stirs up dust, some of which has some radioactive elements in it, in the soil, but nothing that would be threatening. The structure is not designed to withstand attack. It's designed to protect what's under it. But what's under it is already very much encased in concrete and is very safe.
Yeah, and Seth, you bring up one of the really concerning reports yesterday that was that these employees had been taken hostage. The White House was outraged, they said, by those reports of detentions of employees there. Now, let's talk through, though, you know, what this whole exclusion zone looks like and what it means. I mean, there has been gunfire and fighting near this exclusion zone. The zone's about a 19-mile radius around the site of where this disaster happened. It includes an abandoned city. So if the Chernobyl plant were hit by gunfire or a missile, just explain what the worst case scenario would be.
Right. I don't think the worst case scenario is anything like what we saw when the plant had the original accident. We had an entire core of a reactor
Can we pause it right
fire,
here?
opened.
Now, the reason why I'm pausing it right
Yeah.
here, because this is where the media likes to spin its fear or its propaganda. Look, the Chernobyl plant, especially the reactor where the disaster took place, it's under concrete, it's under a lot of steel, it's heavily protected. But leave it to the media to say, well, what would happen if a missile hit it? Would there be a big boom? That's the thing we're getting from our wonderful people at MSNBC. Now, it's a fair question to ask, but at the end of the day, the material there, if the particulate matter gets into the atmosphere, it will be a long-term consequence. But I think what everyone wants to see is, will there be an explosion? Leave the corporate media to do that. Let's play the rest.
To the air and blowing into the air. This is something very different. This is fuel that's been cooling for decades, that is under concrete. If the facility were attacked, that would release radioactive elements into the air, but the large number of those have already decayed away. It would be more of a local issue. It would not be a significant threat. It would certainly make headlines to have radiation from Chernobyl in the air again. But, and it would be an incredibly dangerous thing for people to try to do, to hit the site with weapons. But you would not have a fire. You would not have something that would be continuously spewing. You would effectively putting some dust out into the air that has radiation in it and then would settle again.
Oh, just dust of radiation. Okay. But yeah, mainstream media always tries to hype things, always tries to get some they want loose ends. They want to chase these loose ends because it helps fill the 24-hour news cycle.
And important to note that none of that seems to be the goal here. This Chernobyl area is on the route to Kyiv, which seems to be
let's pause it
why
here.
it was
All right, and I have to pause it here because again, look, even an invading army, looking at the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, I'm pretty sure both sides know the danger of Chernobyl, and I really doubt that there's going to be some jagoff thinking like, hey, let's go ahead and shoot a missile at that old power plant. I hope no one's that stupid, but no, media, there will not be a giant kaboom. That's not how it's going to work. It'll just release a lot of dust and radioactive material into the atmosphere. That's it. And as we are reporting now, there is, again, further conflict around the capital of Ukraine, and Chernobyl is on that pathway to the capital in Ukraine. So that's an issue that's taking place there. Let's go ahead and play the rest of it. I'm at least glad that the scientists.
Hi everyone, it's Katie Porter, and as always,
Can't even watch a 5-minute freaking. Oh, Katie Porter, grassroots supports, huh? Katie Porter. That's a Democrat. You're not grassroots. We'll put her on the list. Katie Porter, put her on the list. She's gonna interrupt the show. Oh, by the way, I'm going to start doing the senators. There is a lot of senators up for re-election this year, so I think I've done one so far. I want to start hitting the other 31 or 34 or whatever the fuck it is. There's a lot of senators up for re-election, so we're going to start doing our stony progressive takedowns of senators this week. Possibly on Monday, I would say, if I survive the weekend, right? Every weekend, let's survive it.
What would happen if there was some sort of attack that happened at the power plant? Let's play the rest.
Tomasco. Seth, great. Thank you so much. Your expertise is greatly appreciated on this topic.
Thank you.
Oh, that was
Thanks for watching our YouTube
All right, let's pause.
channel.
No.
All right.
No one wants to watch your YouTube.
Nobody wants to watch that. All right. Like I said, we're going to stick with Ukraine for the whole show here pretty much, but take out a lot of different perspectives, right? So that's like 4 different perspectives of this show.
There's Zelensky, fella.
Oh, if you don't know who this is Jon Stewart. He used to do The Daily Show. It was the best thing out there. Now he does The Problem with Jon Stewart.
Boy, I mean,
yeah,
we are comedians, and we know the general brand of cowardice that runs through our business.
Yeah,
and the that fake braggadocio that comes from standing on stage and having a heckler and destroying him with a microphone. What this dude is doing, it is incredibly moving. I mean, we're watching Shecky Green transform into Churchill, like his grace. And I don't know if have you listened to any of the speeches that he's given?
Yeah, I watched the 9-minute long one that was, I mean, it was powerful.
Remarkable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just the grace and the Klitschko brothers that are over there. I mean, boy, what a terrible time to kind of notice the real spine of this country. I wish it was not in such terrible circumstances. But do you guys feel any of that as a comedian? Are you shocked? Is it, does that resonate with you guys at all?
I can say yeah, what's funny, I guess, is that for the past 4 or 5 years, comedian gets kind of worn with a bit of a mark of shame in a lot of ways, Wait,
past 4 or 5 years? Wait, what? Try 40 or 50. We might be the lowest form of show business.
But I feel like I grew up as a kid, like idolizing comics and comedy, and maybe you just have a different perspective
You were a
as you get
child.
older.
You were a child.
Could that be it?
You were 6, so it seemed very impressive.
Yeah, I guess worshiping Dave Attell, maybe in retrospect.
There you go.
Some holes. But no, so watching this guy, stand up and communicate on such a human level to say, attack this region, the region where my best friend's mother lived, where I cheered alongside you at the European Cup, really just dropping the political bullshit and connecting on this. I'm a human being, you're a human being level.
Right.
It was so touching.
I mean, in many respects, like they are brethren.
Yeah.
It is, New Jersey attacking Staten Island. Like it's just the weirdest. There's so much shared history, and we've never seen something like this in our modern era of, listen, no one's going to excuse the larger countries and some of the imperialist adventures that we go on and some of the false justifications that we make for it. But generally, there will be a period of an attempt to paper over bald nationalism or crass economic interests with some high-minded rhetoric about something. Putin was just like, yes, we are going to go in and kill everybody. You're just like, wait, what? I mean, it's such a bizarre throwback.
It's full Bond villain, just like old school. Yeah, I can't. There's all these articles. Why is Putin doing it? There is not a single logical reason to justify this.
You know what I keep thinking of? I sort of keep thinking of the comics table at the cellar.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that somebody from that little round table has been forced into this incredible feat of courage and statesmanship. And I sort of imagine, when you're sitting around the comics table and everybody's telling their horror stories, like I once opened at a Fuddruckers and there wasn't even people are just coming in and using the fucking Fixins bar. And like Zelensky's at the table, and you're all telling your horror stories of gigs and things. And he's just like, I was attacked by the third largest army in the entire world. And then everybody's just going to be like, oh, why do you always bring that up?
Yeah. The booker at the Chuckle Hut shorted me $30, so I've been through it.
I once did a Roger Paul gig in Rochester. They didn't feed me for 3 days. And he's like, they had the missiles pointed at. I mean, it's just the courage and the humanity that I think I'm also shocked at the humanity that they're displaying.
Yeah.
That they're not responding in hatred and in anger. They're responding in care, in like, look, I don't know if you saw, there was a video, it's heartbreaking, of a man saying goodbye.
Yes.
He's sending his daughter away and he's going to stay and fight. And it's, boy, there's a part of me that truly hopes that this is where the social media algorithm will shine. There's a part of me that hopes that if anything can go viral, let it be this. Let it be these speeches. Let it be these moments. And let that in some way build momentum to end this. That would be.
Yeah. I am praying for that, but it's so dystopian that we are like, please, algorithm, favor the right side of history.
Let me tell you something, man. Artificial intelligence fucking owes us.
Yeah.
It's driven me down so many rabbit holes that it's got to give me something. It's got to provide some measure of redemption for itself, that if it can, take this moment, but boy, and I just feel, you're watching a guy drive a country over a cliff in real time. And I don't think this ends well for anybody, but I also don't think it ends well for for Putin and the Russian people. I feel like he is driving the Russian people over a cliff. He's going to hurt them economically, psychically, in so many different ways. And for fucking what? This guy...
For nothing.
Yeah.
And they're going to get hurt bad in this. I mean, they'll be a pariah country without in the inability to access dollars and trade with the West. It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt them so badly.
Even emotionally, it looks like the kind of psychic wound that a country is going to be hard. And I understand he's feeding them a whole nonsense of, we're demilitarizing and denazifying. What was it? Denazification.
Yeah.
First of all, the guy who runs it's Jewish.
Yeah.
Like Zelensky's, he's a Jewish guy. I don't. You going to denazify him? Is that what it's called now? Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's the inverse of that.
Yeah.
But fuck, man. Not to sugarcoat it and not to suggest that we have any deeper, nuanced understanding of the relationship between those two countries, because as Americans, I can assure you, we do not. we only learn geography when somebody is bombing somebody. I mean, that's the level of attention that we pay on the world stage.
And that somebody is usually us.
And that somebody is usually us. And then all of a sudden, everybo's an expert on where Kabul is.
Yes.
Yeah. Nobody else knows. What do you think? Does a guy like Trump now go like? How do they turn that? Do they turn that with the? I guess the turn is just like, this never would have happened with me because he knows I'm strong. And you're like, well, maybe he never would have happened with you because he knows that he wasn't up against anything when you were there. So he didn't need to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
I don't fucking know.
I think Trump's already said something like, I alone can fix this Russian problem, which is
Is that really true?
Yeah.
Well, and that's the talking point, right? 2014, Crimea, Obama, Crimea, now Biden. And
of course,
so,
that's the talking point.
Yeah.
Where's the talking point on, we had $400 million worth of armaments that we denied them because you wouldn't do an investigation into,
Yeah. They're having a discussion. Let's see the first few minutes of Russell before I get throttled on this, but we'll play a few minutes. I want to check out Russell for a few minutes, and then we'll get into some more deep, the last two long clips of the day. Jesus, I'm so used to doing this in the middle of the night, guys.
Ukraine, and some politicians are saying Putin is the new Hitler. Is it that simple, or did our own governments participate in this escalating crisis? Hello there, you 5 million awakening wonders. We're discussing war, of course, and it's a subject that has to be handled sensitively, particularly when it's as complex as the geopolitical conundrum that we are discussing today. I'll let you know initially that if you want to come and see me live, I'm on tour all over the north of England, Newcastle, Scarborough. There's a link in the description, Glasgow, Bristol. Come see me live. It's incredible, and there's room for nuance. And there has to be room for nuance in a subject such as this, where we're discussing the complexities of an escalating military crisis in Ukraine. Russia has invaded. And first of all, I want to put these ideas before you. What's the history in that region? How do we characterize different nations' foreign policies? Are foreign invasions always wrong against a sovereign nation? And does anyone have a moral rectitude and clarity to cast themselves as heroes in a conflict with this degree of complexity? Right up front, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia is wrong. To see soldiers and tanks and all of that kind of stuff, the paraphernalia of war, the horror of war, the inevitable death and suffering that war brings, even if it's spoken of as it is by Putin in terms of liberation, even if it's spoken of as a response to Western antics around NATO, we still are in a position where people are fleeing and death is inevitable. That's obviously a serious situation. War, I suppose, is the apex of what human beings can do when mistreating each other. We do a lot of videos, don't we, about tyranny, saying escalating surveillance is a problem, or control of our finances, or the posturing of apparently liberal politicians who are in fact using legislation to enact further control. But when you are talking about war, we are at the as I say, the pinnacle of what can potentially happen between nations. Let's try and gently unpack this, looking at a variety of sources, and see if we can gently understand this complex situation a little better together. This is from Jacobin. Russia's invasion of Ukraine is sickening. Vladimir Putin had claimed that the Kiev regime refused any resolution of the conflict in the Donbass except through military means. The Russian president now claims to resolve it with far more bloodshed already spreading beyond the Donbass region and risking a wider conflagration. Acknowledging all of this, however, doesn't leave the West blameless in what's now happening, or as political scientist Stephen Walt recently put it,
Yes, that's. I think the point that everybody on the true left is trying to make is that neither side is on the right. The the UN has been invading, or getting closer and closer and closer to Russia's border, while putting more and more troops close to Russia's border for years and years and years. And but also killing Ukrainians is not a way to fucking do this diplomatically. You dickhead Putin. Hey, dickhead America, dickhead Putin. Let's stop being aggressive.
I can believe that Russia's present actions are wholly illegitimate, and also believe that a different set of US policies over the past several decades would have made them less likely. The number one thing I come to this complex story with, well, there are so many. One is my own bafflement, my own sense of emotional dislocation, an inability to trust normal media sources, a sense that I have to decode everything that I'm told. What am I?
Yeah, bullshit meter. Constant bullshit meter when you watch mainstream media. It's fluff pieces and bullshit, like, and then opinion. A lot of opinion. So much opinion. It's like half what they do is opinion. I'm coming at you. I'm showing you news clips and telling you opinions, or showing you opinions and reacting. That's what I do. There's no. I mean, if I give you news, it's when I do my digs, or when I go out and I start going out to rallies and protests coming up here. I'm gonna try to figure out a way to get the internet onto my video here. We'll figure this out eventually, guys, but right now like I said, I'm working through season, so we'll just be doing this for a while.
Fox is saying this, CNN is saying that, MSNBC is saying this, the BBC is saying that. When I'm looking at media, I'm trying to decode it. What I can tell you, of course, obviously, is that war is awful and tragic. What I have a sense of, and I wonder if you feel the same way too, is that we're beyond the era of goodies and baddies. There are just baddies now. You can't say, oh, Russia are bad, but the United States of America with their foreign policy, or Britain are a reliable country. This isn't like the Second World War. And I imagine if you were to look at the Second World War deeply enough, you would find all manner of complex imperial and military issues beyond the obvious vivid horrors of the Holocaust and Nazism that made it a very complex issue with horrors and atrocities being committed by all sides. Just for example, Dresden. So in this time, when none of us trust our governments in the way we used to, when none of us feel like Britain or America in the same sort of blind, dumb way that we once did, where we recognise that our own governments behave in an oppositional way, something like the Ukraine-Russia conflict or invasion, or whatever language you feel is appropriate for your understanding of it, brings to a head the fact that, wow, we no longer live in simple times. Look at what's been happening in Australia. Look at what's been happening in Canada. Look at what's been happening everywhere. This, of course, is much more severe.
And remember what was happening before COVID. There were, in 2019, 2020, there were tons of protests. We're talking civil rights protests. We're talking, wage increase protests. We're talking, anti-government not lockdown, just like invasions of privacy protests. There's all sorts of protests going on through that year, and then we had COVID, and they kind of stifled it for a while, and now here we come again, getting angry, getting mad, and that's what's going to happen for a while. We're not done. We're not complacent, and I guess they're going to have to release a second pandemic to take us out and completely strip our rights away, and anybody that's okay with that is a fascist. And no, the far left is not fascist. We don't want the government to control everything in our lives. We want the money that we pay and the money that our government has access to do things for us, instead of doing things like this, going to war, getting ready for a war. All right, let's check out Jimmy, guys. He had Aaron Mate on. This is the media lies about Ukraine, Russia debunked. And puppy's going to bedroom. So he is sick of listening to me. But we're gonna get two more.
Next guest to help us break down the Ukraine situation. He is a contributor to the Gray Zone and winner of the IF Stone Izzy Award for Independent Journalism and the host of Pushback. You can read his work at his Substack, mate.substack.com. Please welcome award-winning journalist Aaron Mate. Hello, Aaron.
Hi, JD.
Great to have you on. So we're going to do this. So it's happened. Russia has officially invaded the Donbass, the eastern Ukraine. And so Joe Biden is on it, though. Listen to this.
I'll lead an effective strategy to mobilize true international effort to pressure. I'll lead an effective strategy to mobilize true international effort to pressure.
I don't know what he said. Let's hear it one more time.
I'll lead an effective strategy to mobilize true international effort to pressure. I'll lead an effective strategy to mobilize true international effort to pressure.
Okay.
True international
So
pressure.
what I want to do here, there's a lot of moving parts in the Ukraine thing. There's a lot of things. There's a gas pipeline. Right. Of course, energy comes into play. We're going to talk about that. Of course, what happened with NATO.
I mean, that was the first 2 weeks of press briefings. All they talked about was the pipeline. The only thing they talked about was the pipeline. They're shutting that pipeline down. That pipeline's got to be stopped. That pipeline has to stop. We're cutting that pipeline off. Sanctions included on that pipeline. That's all they talked about.
The NATO's expansion onto Russia's border, that also plays into this in a big thing. Also, the 2014 coup that the United States pushed and then installed a government that is infiltrated with neo-Nazis and outwardly, that's not a secret. And then the Minsk agreement that then the Ukrainian government ignored. So all those things led us to Russia doing this, right? Going in and putting troops into Ukraine. So people keep forgetting that all this history. And so there's been a lot of bad takes. Usually we debunk the establishment news. Well, even YouTubers are now doing the same thing, repeating what the corporate news.
I don't even say their names, but I think I've blasted them enough on this. They are so obvious and just regurgitating MSNBC and doing it on YouTube.
Been saying, and I wanted to just show you two examples, and then we'll debunk it and show you how you should actually be thinking about this.
What is actually going on, because the mainstream media lies, and that's why this whole situation is so hard to watch, because it's painful to watch.
So the first one comes from a friend of the show, Kyle Kalinske. He said Biden didn't go extreme with the sanctions because he's now sanctioning Russia over this, President Biden. He went proportional. Okay. No doubt, though, that if Russia takes or tries to take Kiev, the harshest sanctions are in play. Overall, a relatively reasonable response policy-wise, in my opinion, despite Western culpability in getting to this point. And what you said was that you're presuming that the United States has a moral or legal authority that in reality doesn't exist. What right does Biden have to sanction anyone? He doesn't. The United States just set the Mideast on fire. We're still bombing Yemen, Somalia.
Again, one of my two biggest things, end all sanctions, general strike. We need a general strike to change things, and we need to end all sanctions. How can we claim ourselves to be capitalists if we're blocking capitalism? It doesn't hurt the oligarchs of those countries. It doesn't hurt their democratically elected leaders. It doesn't hurt anything. It hurts common people. And they expect common people to put pressure. They expect humanitarian aid to put pressure on the governments, and that's not right. Sanctions are a form of war. We need to end all sanctions.
As we speak, and Israel is still bombing Syria with our blessings. A single sanction on anyone but him or other U.S. leaders is out of proportion. He can start by sanctioning his team for the 2014 Maidan coup, and that's the coup where we helped overthrow the Ukrainian democratically elected government in 2014. That's the United States did that, and we showed you how they did that in our last video about this with Max Blumenthal. So Here's one more take I wanted to show you because a lot of people turn to them and they forget that Sagar is actually a right winger. So people forget this, and they also forget that Crystal Ball also is a Russiagator, right? So then here's what you get. Here's the kind of analysis you get from that.
I never expected a full-scale invasion like this to happen. I was deeply distrustful of U.S. military intelligence, and frankly, I think I got it wrong in terms of what happened here. I never expected Putin and Russia, in order to do something so, frankly, colossally foolish. He has fulfilled the dreams of the neocons now in Washington for all time. He is basically ensured now, Crystal, as we'll be discussing throughout the entire show, a full-scale NATO deployment to the eastern flank. This is the greatest thing that could have ever happened to the U.S. defense budget. I mean, there will now be renewed justified calls. Already I'm seeing this morning the German former defense minister and others saying they're going to be re-upping their armaments. So we are looking at a whole new era of geopolitics here. And it is entirely Putin's fault.
And China sort of tacitly aligning with Russia.
Yep, that's right.
Basically calling for, lessening of hostilities all around. So this very, wishy-washy, both sides kind of a statement, when clearly 100% the aggressor here is Putin and is Russia.
Okay, so that just, ignores the history of what's happening, and it reveals that they don't know it. But so why did the U.S. back a violent coup in Ukraine against an elected government? Why did the U.S. and EU support neo-Nazis?
Also got to mention that she's a millionaire. I think both of them are millionaires, so their opinions when it comes to these things are usually influenced by people who have paid them in the past and the bubbles they run in. That's my personal opinion. Obviously, everything here is my personal opinion. I shouldn't have to say that, but remember that Crystal and I think Sagar are both personally millionaires, so their opinions are hard to take at face value.
Militias. Why were they silent about the attacks on Russia-speaking civilians in Donbass? Why haven't any of these questions been asked by the cheerleading Western media? And so I'll just show you one more video. This is from Adam Schiff.
The United States aids Ukraine and her people so that we can fight Russia over there and we don't have to fight Russia here.
So we've been arming and funding the people fighting Russia and breaking the Minsk Accords in Donbass since 2014 at least. And here's what you say. Again, people don't ever focus on this either. Biden rejected Russian offers to keep Ukraine neutral and helped sabotage the Minsk Accords, which could have prevented this war. Since he's now hanging Ukraine out to dry, perhaps Kyiv can hire Hunter Biden for $80,000 a month for his expertise on how to navigate his dad's crisis. So let me bring in Aaron. Before I do, I just want to just show you this. So again, this is the thing nobody ever talks about. I was there, NATO and the origins of the Ukraine crisis. After the fall of the Soviet Union, I told the Senate that expansion will lead us to where we are today. And who said that? Jack F. Matlock Jr. That's a guy who was there when it happened. And he says Putin's demand is that the process of adding new members to NATO cease and that Russia has assurance that Ukraine and Georgia will never be members. President Biden has refused to give such assurance, but made clear his willingness to continue discussing questions of strategic stability in Europe. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian government has made it clear it has no intention of implementing the agreement reached in 2015 for reuniting the Donbass province into Ukraine with a large degree of local autonomy. An agreement with Russia, Germany, and France that was endorsed by the United States. So that's what's led us to here. And you didn't hear any of that in any of those two critiques I just showed you. And I'll show you one more video and I'll bring in Aaron Mate. Here's Chomsky talking about this.
The question that we ought to be asking ourselves is, why did NATO even exist after 1990? Throughout the whole history of the Cold War, we were told NATO is necessary to defend Western Europe from the Russian hordes, okay? No more Russian hordes. What happens to NATO? It expands, okay? It expands to the east. Its mission changed. Its official mission now is not to defend Europe from the Russian hordes. It's to control the global energy system, sea lanes and pipelines, and to serve.
That's what we said Syria was about. That's what we're saying Russia's about. The Russia-Ukraine thing's about. It's about pipelines. It's about controlling the energy, controlling this last bit of ungreen energy that's highly. We're going to asset off because it's taking something out of the ground and putting money into rich people's pockets.
As a U.S.-run intervention force. Well, you know, we're all educated intellectuals. We can now ask a question. What was the nature of the propaganda we were fed all those years? I mean, if NATO was there to defend the West from the Russians, why is it now expanding right to the borders of Russia, becoming a global U.S. intervention force, protecting sea lanes and pipelines and so on? What that tells us is all the talk about the Cold War was just a pure lie. And there's plenty more evidence for that, which we can go into. Educated intellectuals don't pursue this line of thought, but it's a pretty obvious one. Well, going on to Ukraine, Mearsheimer's point is that for any Russian leader, whoever it might be, you know, Mahatma Gandhi, Ukraine is right at the core of their geostrategic concerns. For Ukraine to be taken into NATO, which is what is repeatedly threatened, would be a very serious threat to Russian security, quite apart from historical interests, which go way back, the origins of the Russian Empire, in fact. So yeah, you can give arguments against Russian interference in eastern Ukraine after the coup that took place there, but it's a complicated story, and the West is not without its significant initiatives there.
So let me bring in Aaron Mate, who you can read at mate.substack.com, and we just react to the bad news reports and what's actually going on and anything I got wrong.
Well, you got nothing wrong. Look, in terms of this Russian invasion, which is going on all over Ukraine, Russia is attacking military sites across Ukraine. It looks like tonight they're attacking the capital, Kiev. And I think the first thing to say about that, and that we have to acknowledge, is that no matter the background, it is illegal. There is a UN charter which allows force only under a few conditions, either if you're under attack in self-defense or in the face of an imminent invasion. And that wasn't the case here when it comes to Ukraine and Russia. And Russia has claimed to care about the UN charter. And I think in this case, they completely violated it. And although I understand their reasons, and they didn't start this crisis, they didn't actually start this war, I think they had other options. Putin has control over a large part of the European energy system, and Russia had leverage to achieve its goals that way. He could have pursued that. He could have pursued other things.
You mean he could have cut off energy shipments to Eastern Europe, and that would have been his leverage?
That's one thing he could have tried. You know, I'm not sure if it would have worked, but he could have tried that. So this, you know, he likes to argue, or you know, the Kremlin likes to argue that they had no other choice, but I just don't buy that. Now, that doesn't mean though that they started this war. This war did not begin this week. That's a point that my colleague Anya Parampil made this week. The war did not begin with the Russian attack on Ukraine. This war really began in 2014 when the U.S. backed a coup in Russia's neighbor. And that's a documented fact. I mean, you played the clip.
And we've been controlling the puppet regime ever since. Ever since. For the last 8 years, it's been our puppet regime in Ukraine, right next to Russia. And we've been arming Nazis in Ukraine. And we've been ramping up any hatred in that country we can ramp up, and giving them weapons and fueling the fire. So,
before, where you have Victoria Nuland, a top Obama and now Biden official, who's choosing the next leadership of Ukraine. And lo and behold, a few weeks later, that's exactly who came in power after the president Yanukovych was violently overthrown. That's a coup. And I'm sure in many years from now, once we get the declassified documents, we'll find out even more about how involved the U.S. was. So shortly after that, you had a war breakout, because even after a coup that ousted the government of Yanukovych, then the new coup government started cracking down on Russian-speaking people, banned Russia as a language. And there was incidents like in Odessa in 2014, where dozens of people were burned alive. Russian speakers were burned alive.
By Nazis.
By Nazis. And after that That's what prompted the separatist regions, or I'm sorry, these rebel regions, Russian-speaking, Russian-aligned regions, to launch a rebellion because they didn't want to live under the reign of Nazis who threatened to burn them alive. And there's been a brutal war for the last 8 years in which the vast majority of the casualties have occurred on the rebel-held side. And it's those people, the victims of that war, that we're not allowed to acknowledge. It goes back to a term that Chomsky used with Edward Herman in Manufacturing Consent. There are worthy and unworthy victims. Worthy victims are the victims of US enemies. Unworthy victims, people who we can't acknowledge, are the ones who were responsible for killing. And throughout this 8-year war, the US has been pumping Ukraine with billions of dollars worth of weapons. Just imagine if Russia had done in Mexico what the US did in Ukraine. Launch a coup and then flood the country with billions of dollars worth of weapons. The only difference is that the US would have done what Russia just did a long time ago.
A long time ago.
They would not have waited. So that's the background.
I mean, look what we did with the Cuban Missile Crisis, and that was, what, 60 years ago? I mean, we weren't going to allow Russia to put missiles in Cuba, and so we were, almost had World War III over it. And so you're exactly right. We would have did what Putin did, but much quicker.
Yeah. When Blinken and Biden talk about the rules-based international order, right? That's their mantra.
Yes.
Russia is following, according to US terms, the rules-based international order, where you use force to protect your own interests. That's what the US does. The US accusing someone else of violating their sovereignty is a joke. The US right now is occupying of Syria. Syria does not want US troops there. But we don't even talk about that because it just presumed, like some people presume that we have the right to sanction other countries, that we can do whatever we want. So Russia is simply following the terms that the US has already laid down as, quote, the rules-based international order, except the difference between Russia and the US, Russia is just doing it on their borders. Syria is not on the US border, the US is occupying it. Ukraine is not on the US border, yet the US launched a coup there and has sent billions of dollars worth of weapons there. There's a broader background that's been happening over the last 30 years. As you mentioned, the expansion of NATO up to Russia's borders. Also, and this never gets talked about, but it's very important, there's been a continuous dismantling by the US of the arms control agreements reached during the Cold War that essentially prevented the world from destruction. The Bush administration kicked it off while they were expanding NATO to Russia's borders. In 2002, 2003, they killed the anti-ballistic missile treaty. And they said at the time that they needed to do this to protect Europe from Iranian missiles, which is a complete joke. The obvious aim was to build facilities in places like Poland that the US can use to encircle Russia. That's the aim. And that's been continued. And in 2007, Vladimir Putin gave a speech at the Munich Security Conference where he warned that along with NATO expansion, the destruction of these arms control accords is threatening a lot of danger and that Russia is eventually going to have to respond. The US ignored all that. The following year, Ukraine was promised NATO membership along with Georgia. And fast forward to 2014, you had that coup, and you had the coup government talking about joining NATO. You also had, in the years since the coup happened, Trump pulling out of the INF Treaty, another vital Cold War arms control treaty, and also killing the Open Skies Treaty. So you have a coup in Ukraine, you have nonstop expansion of NATO, and you have killing of arms control treaties that keep the peace and that allow for the US to build up even more offensive weapon systems surrounding Russia. And it's in that context that Russia started building up its forces late last year and started making demands and laid down a very clear red line. And Putin was serious about this. He threatened military technical measures. He didn't say what they were, but it's obvious now what he meant. Now, I didn't think he would invade. I was wrong about that. He was serious.
Me too. I'm the same way. I thought he was not going to actually invade. I thought that was maybe just going to be a kind of a cold play back and forth on the border or whatever, but he caught me off guard. I didn't think he was actually going to invade, but I wish we could have played stalemate for a little longer and maybe had some true talks.
We said that NATO expansion has to stop, that we can't allow for a Ukraine, which has a lot of traditional ties to Russia, to be a NATO member and to host U.S. offensive weapons. And what was the U.S. response? Even though they supposedly had all this intelligence pointing to a Russian invasion, they were willing to hang Ukraine out to dry and say, no, it's more important for us to assert this stupid right to expand a hostile, useless military alliance than it is to save Ukraine from a catastrophe. Because, by the way, we're not going to help Ukraine at all if they get invaded, which is exactly what's happened.
That's exactly. So there's another part to this, too, that people leave out. First of all, this is your tweet, which I thought was great. You say, for the U.S. project of turning Ukraine into a vassal state while pretending to care about its sovereignty, you couldn't have picked a worse face than the guy who helped organize the coup of 2014 and then got his son a lucrative gas company board seat in the immediate aftermath. And
Ukraine.
Here's what.
Like, why would, yeah. We've been talking about Ukraine since Biden even, like, popped his head around, right? It's been the top of everyone's work, like, other countries since Biden poked his head around.
One more, since we're talking about the bad coverage. Caitlin Johnstone says, the fact that Western media cover Ukraine in a wildly different way from U.S.-led wars is actually immensely important and points to a problem that urgently needs attention. Anyone who has a problem with that should shut the F up and stop interrupting adult conversations. So I want to show you this. So this is another part. Of course, there's a pipeline involved. Of course, there's got to be some energy involved, some oil, some gas, something. And so this is from the American Prospect, and it says Nord Stream pipeline snarled in the U.S.-Russia fossil energy war. But this is from last December, right? So this discarded sanctions over Nord Stream were attempted protectionism for U.S. gas producers. So they're trying to – so what is happening is Russia sells, I think, 30%, maybe even 40% of the energy supply to Europe, and that's not good for the United States, right? And so they want to protect our gas interests. It's selling to Europe. This is real. So watch this. So there's a pipeline. It's called Nord Stream 2, and the pipeline was built to send gas directly from Russia to Germany, bypassing Ukraine and removing a source of income, as well as a strategic choke point for the former Soviet state. In May, President Biden lifted sanctions that Congress and former President Donald Trump placed 2 years ago. Remember, Trump was supposed to be in bed with Putin? Here he was sanctioning their frickin' pipeline, and which was 95% complete when Biden took office. It was finished in September, and now it awaits certification from German regulators. Echoing criticisms are Ted Cruz. He warned that Russian President Vladimir Putin has built the pipeline so then the Russian tanks can ride into Ukraine. Now, why would Ted Cruz want to say that? Well, the senator from the Permian Basin, who has emerged as the pipeline's toughest critic, has another reason to oppose the infrastructure for Russian gas, preserving the European export market for U.S. liquefied natural gas. So, oh my God. So there you go. So they wanted to stop that pipeline from Europe to Germany, a direct pipeline that goes around, that cuts out Ukraine. And they wanted to stop that. Why? Because there's a big liquefied natural gas market for the United States there. And beyond Texas, senators from other oil-producing states, such as North Dakota. Isn't that interesting that big oil-producing states have slammed the pipeline, also citing national security? The strategic priority makes sense, given that the U.S. outflanks Russia as the top exporter of natural gas. Despite the pandemic, U.S. producers in...
So it would be weird if the world's highest producers of weapons and gas fought over gas, wouldn't it? That would be weird or ironic at all, that the world's leading producers of oil and gas of natural gas fought a weaponized war. Wait a second. Jesus. Come on.
2020 saw the highest natural gas exports on record. So this is about gas money, baby, fossil fuels. Freedom Gas, remember, as Energy Secretary Rick Perry dubbed the fuel, has been explicitly pitched to European producers in recent years as an alternative to Russian energy.
Oh my God. I hate it when they change the name of something to try to explicit some fake emotion. Like, Oh, I hate it. I hate it so much. That's my least favorite thing. That ugh, gross, 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 gross.
Perry, who is also the former governor of Texas, told reporters in 2019 that after freeing Europe from Nazis, the United States is again delivering a form of freedom to the European continent. This time, he said, rather than in the form of young American soldiers, it's in the form of liquefied natural gas. Freedom gas, baby. Now, even as it looks to decarbonize its power sector long term, Germany plans to ramp up its reliance on gas over the next decade. The country's new governing coalition, which includes the Green Party and the pro-business FDP, they have agreed to build gas-fired power plants as it aims to retire coal by 2030. Expectations of Nord Stream's impact on global demand for liquefied gas could influence the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, the regulator that approves gas drilling facilities. So what they're saying is that they're afraid that the Federal Regulatory Agency that approves gas drilling facilities might not approve them if there isn't the market for it in Europe, right? So that's what they're afraid of. Okay. Jesus. Those expectations were jolted on Tuesday after a call between Biden and Putin. The United States would be willing to use the pipeline as leverage against Putin's military buildup on the border of Ukraine. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan told reporters at a press conference. Sullivan added, if Vladimir Putin wants to see gas flow through the pipeline, he may not want to take the risk of invading Ukraine. So you know we don't give a shit about the people of Ukraine. Nope. So what is our strategic interest? Well, there's one of them. In Europe, the debate over U.S. sanctions is viewed as a play not only for energy security, but for lucrative energy markets. Violating territorial sovereignty, even as...
It's never necessarily the only thing, but, you know, the fact that we need to produce weapons, we need to get rid of weapons to keep our fake-ass GDP up, and also oil. It's just controlling gas, controlling the markets for gas so many times cost these military escalations.
They claim to preserve it. Sanctions are an aggressive instrument in a fossil energy war, says Claudia Kempfert, an energy economist at DIW Berlin. She told the German newspaper Handelsblatt. She said both Russia and the United States are using natural gas as a political weapon.
Jesus.
So now you know the rest of the story. So, Aaron, can you confirm this for me? So now I saw a news report. Tell me if you can confirm this, that the reason, so when Biden lifted the sanctions that Trump had on that pipeline, he said, okay, Germany, you can start doing your pipeline and have gas flow, but under the condition that if Russia assaults Ukraine militarily, you have to stop your gas coming from. Now, is that part of that? So maybe that's why you find out that Joe Biden didn't want to negotiate. Maybe you find out that's why they've been letting this happen. Maybe that's why you find out the United States actually wanted this to happen, and they're glad that Putin did this in a sense because now they get to stop that Nord Stream pipeline. What do you say to that?
Well, first of all, let me add one more motive to this U.S. aim to block Nord Stream 2. So on top of the fact that, you know, they help gain more profits for the U.S. energy industry, there's another added bonus that they can block Nord Stream 2. They prevent Russia from being further integrated into the rest of Europe.
That's right.
And if you're a hegemon and you thrive off constant confrontation, and Russia is one of your prime enemies, and Russia is a deterrent to U.S. hegemony, having Russia being more integrated with the rest of Europe is a disaster because it reduces the chance of conflict. It means people will be less likely to get on board with you as you try to impose more sanctions or even try to start a war. So blocking this gas pipeline, I think, was a very high priority for U.S. hegemony, not just because of energy industry profits at home, but also just because it helps enforce the U.S.-run system. And on your point about did this factor into Biden's agenda, I think it's totally reasonable to speculate, especially given what we know now. When Biden took office, something happened inside Ukraine that hasn't gotten reported very much, but it's worth paying attention to. It was reported by Time magazine a few weeks ago by a journalist named Simon Schuster. He reported that as soon as Biden came in, Zelensky offered what a top aide to Zelensky called a, quote, welcome gift to Biden. And that was shutting down the three main opposition TV networks, all of them aligned with Russia, taking them off the air. And that's a move that the U.S. embassy at the time cheered as a wonderful move, which is an odd reaction when supposedly we're supposed to believe that Ukraine is a democracy.
Yeah.
But the Zelensky aide is saying that this was done as a welcome gift to the Biden administration to fit with their agenda. Not long after that, the opposition leader inside Ukraine, the main opposition leader for the pro-Russian party, he was put under house arrest. And all this was done to please the Biden administration. Why would the Zelensky administration go out of its way to take opposition pro-Russian television networks off the air to please the Biden administration? Well, the answer is if the Biden administration wants a confrontation with Russia. And Time magazine also reports that not long after all these things happened, Putin saw this as a direct assault on him because his allies in Ukraine were being attacked. And that's when the first of the Russian forces sent to the border started amassing. This is in 2021. So you can actually speculate that the first Russian forces to start gathering on the border were a reaction to the crackdown inside Ukraine that was inspired by the Biden administration. Fast forward to more recently, some other interesting things have happened that have not gotten very much attention. There have been these talks for a long time under something called the Normandy Formula, convened by France, Germany, and Britain to basically try to save the Minsk Accords. That's the peace agreement that was reached in 2015, 7 years ago, that would solve the fighting in the Donbass. The basic bargain is the pro-Russian regions demilitarize, they give up their weapons. In exchange, they get autonomy. Now, if they have autonomy, it means one bad thing for Washington neocons and far-right fascists in Kiev. It means that Ukraine can't join NATO. So basically, Minsk would ensure that Ukraine is at peace and neutral, which I think is a very fair bargain given you have a divided country. And it's insane to put a hostile military alliance on Russia's borders. But the U.S. has put no pressure at all on Ukraine to implement those accords, even though Ukraine signed on to them.
You mean the Minsk Accords?
The Minsk Accords, yeah.
Right.
And so up until a few weeks ago, there were talks under the Normandy Formula to try to save Minsk. And what happened at the most recent round of talks, basically a week ago, what happened? Zelensky announced that he would refuse to negotiate anymore with the rebels. So he would no longer be negotiating with the side that he's fighting. And if you're not going to negotiate with the side you're fighting, then there will be no peace. So contrary to everyone saying that Putin has sabotaged Minsk and all this stuff, it was Zelensky who decided to sabotage Minsk. Now, he faces some pressure at home. There are far-right pro-Nazi forces that have held demonstrations where they threaten to Maidan coup Zelensky if he makes peace. So he is under pressure. But the problem is the U.S., if they wanted to, could step in and say, we have Zelensky's back, we support the Minsk Accords, and that would send a very strong signal to tell the far right to go away because the U.S. has a lot more power, but they haven't. And there's no way Zelensky would have negotiate the rebels. Yet,
check out Jimmy Dore's show, guys. As always, I'm a fan, and especially when he's not doing just the one story over and over again. I am a big fan of Aaron Mate as well. Last segment of the day, I was going to have these two talk about Ukraine and Russia. Let's get one last perspective before we take off for the day.
So we are going to continue talking about Ukraine for a bunch of this episode. We normally try and somewhat avoid the topical stuff because we like these to be evergreen. But this is, so intense, and I feel like people come to us for what's going on behind the scenes. So it seemed like we should really dig into this one anyway. And just to go and
again, Lee Camp, Graham Elwood, Government Secrets is the podcast, the show, and they do it weekly. Check out the podcast, guys.
By the way, people who watch my live stream today, some of this is going to be repeat content, but I think it's worth it. So doing it anyway. Probably some of it will be repeated to your Danny Haifong interview as well, but
yeah, well, we might cover the same ground, but it's part of Government Secrets, and support us at liberapay.com/government secrets, which is Yeah, scrolling below. You can see it below. If you're watching and if you're listening, it's liberapay.com/government secrets. Support what we do. And maybe next week, I didn't think of it this week. Maybe next week we'll start reading the names of the supporters. I don't know. Is that something we should do?
You can absolutely do that. Unfortunately, I think if I recall LiberaPay correctly, you'd have to ask them to email you with their name because it's anonymous.
Oh, you're right. Okay, we're not reading any names, but thank you guys so much for your support. You know who you are.
You know what? Never mind. Let's just make up names next week. I think that'll make people feel good.
We'll read a bunch of fake names, and you pick the one you like the most.
Pick the one that feels like you. Stormy McPherson. Yes and yes.
Wow, Johnny Fisticuffs. Okay, thank you.
So I just wanted to complete the context discussion we were having by saying giving context for something does not mean you're endorsing it. I can be opposed to war, like war in Ukraine or whatever the fuck is going on without, and still give context to it without endorsing it. Just like you and I gave a lot of context as to why and how JFK was assassinated. That doesn't mean we endorse the assassination of JFK. Like, you can talk about why the CIA fucking took him out without that meaning, great job, CIA.
Right. It's so funny. That's just like, that's such a great example. It's like, no, we were definitely in favor of the assassination. That's why we talked about it. We love democratically elected leaders that want to end wars getting taken out. I love that by a secret society that's within the American government. It's perfect.
People right now really act like if you say, hey, I disagree with this, but Putin's doing it because A, NATO is fucking surrounding him and on his borders and it keeps encroaching on him. And they go, you're just supporting him. No, I just said I don't support him. I'm giving context. Nope, can't give in context. Got to be ignorant or you support him.
That breezing past the first statement of not a fan of what Putin is doing is probably the thing that makes me want to punch dumb fucks in the face the most. Just like, you're fucking stupid. Read the first sentence. You hate me. Bam. I just wish I could just like, boom, just clock him in the face once.
With or without the sock on the hand.
Oh, I don't want to hurt my friend Saki. Why would he?
No, this is between me and that guy. This has nothing to do with Saki.
I'm not going to drag Saki into this. You know what I mean? Saki's just out there trying to get workers to own the means of production.
And he's doing a hell of a job too.
He's doing great. Saki is doing fantastic. Whenever we get that new hair transplant wig thing, things are going to take off for him.
He's already got a union of at least 5 toes, possibly 10 in the coming week. But so
this is insane. God, we live in an insane place. All right. So you were saying, putting it in context.
All right. So I'm going to get into some more details that people probably haven't heard. Some of the more informed people probably know this part. But if you want to share the map I have up there of how NATO has grown over the years, it's pretty fucking crazy. Like, right. If you look at, so NATO, let's be clear here. NATO sounds nice and peaceful and wonderful to an average American who just watches CNN. Right. NATO is a military alliance. It creates war. It helped bomb Libya into oblivion. That was a NATO-led war that took actually the most advanced.
I've seen this in several different places, and I think this is the biggest graph you could possibly look at to understand why we got set up to where we are. And I know my stupid face is going to be a big part of it. But again, check out this episode. Check out Lee Camp in general. He's been really, trying to catch us all up on what's actually happening here.
Society in many ways in Africa in terms of, getting everyone housing and healthcare and shit like that. And it fucking bombed it into warlords and open air slavery. So that's what NATO does. So imagine a military pact. You see where, and for those of you listening on the podcast, you can go watch this at rockfin.com/Graham Elward if you want to see the full thing, or you can Google a chart of NATO. But It starts off nowhere near Russia for the most part. It's Norway, Iceland, UK, France, Italy. Sorry, not Italy, but a few countries. It's Denmark. It's not that large. And they give a promise, and those documents have now been revealed, a promise to Russia that it will go no further than that. And then
in 1949, it gave this promise?
Yeah, at the initial, the start of, I believe, at the start of the NATO, they gave this promise to Russia. So then in 52, you have a couple more join on. Then in 55 to 90, you have Germany add in, you have Spain, Portugal is in there. Then you get into the 90s, 1999, you have Poland, you have Hungary joining on. 2004, then Slovakia, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. So now you're getting into like Romania. Some of the former, Soviet bloc countries are joining NATO. And so you're putting NATO like at Russia's door on their fucking border. And again, this doesn't mean I think they should bomb every NATO country, but it helps to understand what their view. And when I say Russia, I think nation states are fucking bullshit. But when I say Russia, I mean the Russian government. I'm not talking about the Russian people. There are anti-war protests in Russia right now. There are also many people in Russia who support what Russia's doing. But when I say Russia, I mean the Russian government does not love having a Western military alliance that is led by the United States on their border with missiles and with, the ability to strike them and harm them. And so they view it as harmful to their security. That's how they're viewing it.
Which is how we would view it, Lee, if the Russians were in Canada, and if they started in Iceland and Greenland and then moved into northern Canada, and now they're on the border just across from Montana, we would not be happy with this at all.
Yeah. And this is, I think it's 17 countries maybe that are now in NATO. And imagine if the U.S. was surrounded by 17 countries that all had a military pact to basically wage war against the United States. I think we might respond not pleasantly, I would say.
Yeah.
So then you have 2017, a few more add in. Then you have a membership action plan, which means these countries are planning to join NATO. And then you have intensified discussion on this map, which is Ukraine and Georgia. Now, Ukraine, again, former Soviet bloc country, many in Ukraine consider themselves Russian, not Ukrainian. That's how stupid national borders often are. The Donbass region particularly, there are many
borders and governments are both bullshit.
Russians, I don't know the exact percentage. I think it might be as high as 50%, or more. But I read a reporter's account of the tens of thousands, I think it's at least 100,000 so far, that are fleeing the Donbass region into Russia. He got onto one of the buses and said, how many of you are Russian citizens already? And 50% raised their hand. And how many of you consider yourself Russian? And almost all of them raised their hand. So this is a region of the Ukrainian border where these people, many of them, consider themselves Russian. They don't consider themselves Ukrainian. Yes, they like their home area. They want to stay in their home, but they don't view themselves as Ukrainian over Russian. And so then you have many in the Donbass region who are these kind of anti-Russian separatists. And just like there's separatists in a lot of places. There are a lot of people in Texas that are separatists. But you have these anti-Russian separatists who hate the Russian-speaking, Russian culturally speaking people in Donbass. And these are the neo-Nazi linked groups, some of them straight up Nazis. And they go around and they will beat the shit and sometimes kill people that are speaking Russian, that show Russian culture. So that's what you have going on for the past 8 years since 2014, when the U.S. backed a coup in Ukraine. Before that, Ukraine had a Russia favorable government. And the U.S. backed a coup in 2014 that involved a lot of Nazis. Now, in the government, it's mostly not Nazis. You're not going to find a guy with a swastika at the top of the Ukrainian government. But the power, the boots on the ground that created that coup, many of them are Nazis or Nazi linked. Then you have 2019. This comedian gets elected in Ukraine, which I like that idea.
Right?
He literally, like Zelensky.
Even though these guys both do very serious topics, they both are comedians. Both Graham Elwood and Lee Camp.
Literally got elected because he starred as the Ukrainian president in a comedy show. And so you can go watch clips online. It's fucking hysterical. And so he gets elected and he's Jewish. So, he's probably not loving the Nazis, but he's technically, he got elected also as on a path of peace. He said he'd create peace in the Donbass region, etc. None of that's happened. And then I wanted to read some quotes. Sorry if I don't know if you wanted to say anything. I don't know if I was talking over you, but.
No, this is the other thing just to point out here that should be noted too, that is lost in the whatever war hysteria of America right now, is that Zelensky a week ago was like, hey, the West is causing the problems here. Like Zelensky was like, you guys are causing all the tension here. Let's just settle down. And then the West leaned on him or something. And then the day before Putin started bombing, Zelensky said, we're gonna search out nuclear options as our defense. And that's when it seems to me, this is just my speculation, that he says that, and then shortly thereafter Putin starts going into Ukraine.
So it seems like, I don't know that we'll ever get the full play-by-play, but this was one of the rare moments. The reason many of us, and I can't remember if I said it publicly, I might have said it on a podcast, but this is the reason many people on the left thought Russia was not going to go into Ukraine. Yes, they thought they might do something. They might fire at the Nazis on the border, but they didn't think there was going to be any kind of incursion or invasion or whatever, is because the U.S. has lied us into every fucking war. We've been lied into Vietnam, Korea, Iraq, Libya, Syria, Afghanistan. Every time you hear, and then of course economic wars are all lies too. Venezuela, Iran, and the list goes on for an hour. But anytime you hear the U.S. saying that, it's all fucking propaganda. So when the U.S. came out and said, "Oh, Russia's getting ready to do this thing," no one on the left, at least, who's informed of their history, who knows how much the U.S. has lied about all of these wars, thought that the U.S. was telling the truth, because they just fucking lie endlessly.
Right.
But now
I didn't think he was going to do this. I didn't think Putin was going to do this.
No, I didn't either. And so it seems now clear that the U.S. knew he was going to do this. He had probably spoken to China about it, and they were essentially waiting for the Olympics to be over, honestly. And the U.S. knew this was going to happen, and they figured that they could somehow get ahead of it or make it more difficult if they announced that it was about to happen. But when you walk out and you have no credibility and you've lied to the American people endlessly for fucking decades about every war going back to the Spanish-American War, no one believes you. So when they walk out and go, "Oh yeah, they're gonna invade. It's gonna be false flags, probably," like everyone's like, "Ah, right, yeah, we've fallen for that one enough."
Right.
So it's like, it's on them. It's their fucking own fault. Like, if you're going to lie about everything that's ever happened in the world, then don't be surprised when people don't believe you.
Yeah.
And of course, within that.
And after almost 3.5 hours, I like that as a good spot to stop. I'll be doing an interview show sometime on Sunday. So yeah, if you're still watching, thanks for checking me out. Subscribe and hit the notification button so that way you're notified when I go live. And let's see how the algorithm works this week. See how many times I actually pop up on people's feeds after you hit that notification button. Let's see if I actually show up when I'm live, huh? I've heard from a couple of my friends saying that they literally went online to check to see if I was live at the moment. Checked my site, didn't show that I was live. And the next day they would see that I had been live that night and done a 2 or 3 hour stream or whatever, and they're like, "Yeah, dude, I checked. Didn't show you live." So, I know it's hard to hit the notification, and let's see if we can grow this week. See how we're doing. Let's keep sharing it out. Thanks for joining me.